Ohio, Ohio. Indeed. Thank you so very much for joining the Larry Elder Show. I am not Larry Elder. You know, the voice of the great sage of South Central. But I am Bob France, and I am in Ohio, Ohio, live in the ReliefFactor.com studios of AM 1420, The Answer in Cleveland. That's right, the birthplace and the home of rock and roll. We're gonna continue. That's right. We are going to continue that claim forever. It is ours, and I really appreciate you being with us here. Oh, that's problematic. I got all kinds of feedback coming here from Skype. I wanted you to listen and watch the show on Skype if you would like to at LarryElder.com, but you might not be able to do that. We just had a bunch of audio feedback. Not sure exactly why that was, but welcome to the program. Thanks for being with us. Larry is doing more promotional work for the unmitigated hit. I mean, I don't know what else to call Uncle Tom. Smashing success. Tremendous movie with tremendous reviews, extraordinarily important. Uncle Tom, now available for you to purchase and watch at UncleTom.com. Larry is on the road doing more promotional work for that very important piece of now American documentary film. That is exactly what it is. It is something that I think everybody, black and white, and any shade in between those two, should watch to really, truly understand some of the struggles and some of the problems and some of the issues faced by black conservatives in America today. We're always talking, because of where we are in the world right now, about race and about the black experience in America. The black experience is one thing, and it's always up for, it's a matter of discussion, and that's fine. The black conservative experience is another animal altogether. It is just a totally different game when you're talking about being black and being conservative, and thus not being down with the cause, thus trading your race for your ideology, and et cetera, et cetera. It's a fantastic movie about so many who have faced all of these things and what it's like and how important it is in America, quite frankly, how important it is for all races to understand that freedom of thought transcends skin color. You do not have to vote a certain way. You do not have to have a particular ideology because your skin is a different hue than somebody else's. You are allowed freedom of thought. It's something that Larry has built an entire career preaching about, and so many others who are on that film do as well. So I'm not going to talk about the movie for the entire night, although a lot of what is going on in America is kind of found in that movie, to be quite frank, as we continue to deal with racial fire, racial tensions, racial violence, and much, much more. So thanks so much for joining us again. We got two great guests coming up on the program in about half an hour at about 33 past the hour. We're going to talk with Congressman Jim Jordan, who is the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, and he is Ohio's 4th Congressional District Representative. He was on the job today in the judiciary hearing talking about a number of things, not the least of which is the breaking news that Michael Flynn, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has been cleared. An appeals court has directed the judge, Obama judge, federal judge Emmett Sullivan, who rejected, or at least said, I want to wait and hear some amicus briefs from another judge before I'll accept the Department of Justice run by Bill Barr and their recommendation to dismiss the charges against General Flynn. That judge, Emmett Sullivan, as you know, cannot stand Donald Trump, has made it very clear, and made it very clear what he was doing, and that he had nothing to do with justice. It had everything to do with taking down Michael Flynn, because Michael Flynn represented the Trump transition team, and Michael Flynn essentially represents everything that's wrong with America in the minds of Obama loyalists, like an activist judge like Emmett Sullivan. So we know the story. The judge found a retired judge to say, will you please give a reason why I don't have to accept this dropping of the charges by the DOJ so that I can get somebody else to file some charges? And finally, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia ruled 2-1 today that the lower court, Sullivan's court, must grant the request by the Department of Justice to drop its case against former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, Lieutenant General Michael Flynn. Flynn won his request for a writ of mandamus ordering Judge Emmett Sullivan to grant the DOJ's motion last month. The appeals court order states, upon consideration of the emergency petition for a writ of mandamus, the responses thereto, and the reply of the briefs of amici curiae in support of the parties, and the argument by counsel, it is ordered that Flynn's petition for a writ of mandamus be granted in part. The district court is directed to grant the government's Rule 48A motion to dismiss, and the district court's order appointing an amicus or amicus is hereby vacated as moot in accordance with the opinion of the court filed herein this date. So it's such an enormous day. And on the same day that Lieutenant General and former National Security Advisor Flynn is cleared by that lower court, Congressman Jim Jordan was holding court, sort of, as the ranking member on the Judiciary Committee, talking about Attorney General William Barr, whom the liberals who run the Congress and run that committee and all of the rest see as the greatest threat to American jurisprudence, to America's rule of law in the country. They cannot stand William Barr because William Barr actually makes his determinations and decisions and actions based on the law. It's his second go-round as Attorney General, and he cannot and will not be swayed by partisan nonsense. And so Jim Jordan spoke today and conflated the two and talked about how Attorney General Barr is doing the right thing at the right time, at the same time that people who are trying to get rid of him so that all of their previous shenanigans, and I'll use that just to be generous, their criminal activities in the past of trying to go after an incoming president and using bogus dossiers to get the FISA court to grant spying approval on American citizens just because they didn't like the outcome of an election. Just as all of this is kind of coming to a head, the individuals who were responsible for all of that want Barr gone before he can actually complete the work. And attorney federal attorney, for granted, I want to say William Barr, and I mean to say John Durham. John Durham's work before it can be completed. So all of this is happening. The same dirty, bad actors who framed Michael Flynn are the same dirty, bad actors who got the surveillance on Carter Page and committed all of these illegal actions, using the FISA court, using and abusing the FISA court. This has been covered ad nauseum, that all of these things are going on by the same people, and it all kind of came to a head at one time. And Congressman Jim Jordan could not resist the opportunity during that Judiciary Committee hearing today to lay it all out.
I mean, the very day, you almost have to laugh at this, the very day you have a hearing going after the Barr Justice Department and alleging that there's politics involved there, the very day we get the order from the United States Court of Appeals. The order says, dismissing the Flynn case, the district court is directed to grant the government's motion to dismiss. The district court's order appointing amicus is hereby vacated. They're not political, they're just right. If there's any politics, I mean, it's again, you almost have to laugh if it wasn't so serious. The politics, Attorney General Holder said he was Obama's wingman. The Obama-Biden Justice Department attacked investigative journalists. Here's what one of them said. James Risen with the New York Times said this: if a president throws a whistleblower in jail for trying to talk to a reporter or gets the FBI to spy on a journalist, he will have one man to thank for bequeathing him such expansive power: Barack Obama. It's not me talking, that's James Risen of the New York Times, when the Justice Department, the Obama, Holder, Biden Justice Department, went after him. Of course, we know about Fast and Furious. We know about Operation Choke Point.
And we'll pause it there to point out that last name when he talked about the Obama, Holder, Biden administration. Yes, the Democrats' presumptive nominee for President of the United States, Joe Biden, has been exposed by today's revelations to be the liar that we always thought he was. Handwritten notes taken by former FBI agent Peter Strzok revealed that President Barack Obama directed the FBI to continue investigating Michael Flynn just weeks before he was to become President Trump's national security advisor, in a meeting during which Vice President Joe Biden suggested that Flynn be charged with violating the Logan Act, the never-before-used 1799 law about conducting foreign policy outside of the boundaries and outside of the limitations of the federal government. Joe Biden knew what was going on. Barack Obama knew what was going on. Eric Holder and Loretta Lynch, both of his AGs, knew what was going on. And now, as a reverend in Chicago once said, the chickens are coming home to roost. We'll be right back.
You're listening to The Larry Elder Show.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for Townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lanhee Chen.
ADF, fighting for those whose liberties are being violated. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We used to be able to testify in court, and we were believed. Now, unless there is a video from 3 different angles, no one cares what you have to say. With all this talk about racism and racist cops, I've never seen people treated differently because of their race. And while I know that cowards that have never done this job will call me a racist for saying it, all I've ever seen was criminal behavior and cops trying to stop it, and they didn't give a rip what their skin color was. I've seen cops help and save any type of race, gender, or ethnicity you can think of, and while that used to mean something, no one cares anymore. I've been called every name you can think of, and many of them with racial overtones, and it's never come from cops. I've watched African American cops take the brunt of this and even talked one rookie out of quitting after he was berated by a lot of cowards that had the same skin color as him. I've heard words I never heard before coming a cop. Uncle Tom, cracker, pig, and the N-word, just to name a few. I've heard them thousands of times, and never once did I see an officer retaliate. They just took it. The nasty words have now turned into rocks and bottles and gunfire. I've watched it happen to those around me, and I've seen the total destruction of their life. This job is a walking time bomb, and you can get cancelled or prosecuted on the very next call, even if you do everything right. No profession has to deal with that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager with you. Somebody sent me a video of 2 black guys who were big fans of America. And they showed video after video of quite awful conduct by police against whites. I remembered one of them where the guy was begging for his life, and it's not quite clear to anybody why he got killed. And said it, and they made the point, which is irrefutable. Had this been a black person, everybody would have known his name, and it would have been a major cause celeb in the United States. There is actually more of that against whites than against blacks, according to all the data that we have. The police are overwhelmingly not biased against blacks.
Call the Larry Elder Show now at 888-971-SAGE. That's 888-971-7243. Eldorado's Let Larry Know What's on Your Mind.
All right, Bob France, sitting in once again for the Sage. It's 20 minutes past the top of the hour. Thanks for being with us. Larry Elder is promoting his movie tonight, Uncle Tom, and I want to remind you about it. There is a reason why the leftist Democrats in America don't want you to see this, because it's a story they don't want you to see, told by the people they don't want you to hear. At a time when so many people desperately need to hear this story. This is the story of Uncle Tom. Go to UncleTom.com, enter the discount code Larry, and receive 20% off the price of the on-demand rental or the cost of the DVDs. It's the story of America's black conservatives in their own voice. UncleTom.com, and enter the code Larry for 20% off. Such an important thing to do. All right, we are going to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to talk about race. We're going to talk about Bubba Smollett. I'm sorry. I meant to say Jussie Wallace. Oh, wait a minute. I'm getting them mixed up here. Somehow, some way, I've got them mixed up, but we'll figure it out. And there's a reason why that I'm mistaking those two or conflating those two. Because, yes, just do not buy the he didn't know story. Much more coming on this a little bit later in the program, probably toward the end of this hour. Talking, of course, about NASCAR racer Bubba Wallace, who, along with his team and with NASCAR executives, tried to perpetrate yet another racial or racist hoax on America. Was it quite to the level of Jussie Smollett? Not quite, because there was no allegations of a beating by two big Nigerian bodybuilders posing as white Trump supporters wearing red hats at 20 below at 2 o'clock in the morning while on the way back from Subway. So not quite to that level. But yes, I do think we can officially now, thanks to the FBI, which sent 15 agents to Talladega to investigate the noose that was supposedly placed in the garage stall of Bubba Wallace because Bubba Wallace dared to challenge NASCAR on allowing Confederate flags to be flown at their events. We can officially say now, after the FBI did their job and made their report, that it was indeed fake news. So that's just what. So you just chew. Yeah, that's right, fake news, and you can take that however you wish. So we're going to get into that in a bit, but I want to stay here for a moment on the biggest news of the day. Actually, there's a lot of really big news today, but specifically, Michael Flynn, his years-long nightmare is over. He's been dealing with this now for 3.5 years. Michael Flynn's fortune is gone, and not that he was a rich man. He was a military servant, for crying out loud, but his family's personal savings have been gone down to zero. He's lost his home. He's had to pay costly attorneys, countless amounts of dollars over the course of the last 3.5 years because he was set up by the Obama administration, from the president through the vice president Joe Biden, through the leader of the FBI, through leadership at the FBI, and all the way down the line. Michael Flynn was coerced into pleading guilty to something that he did not do, all for the purpose of trying to stop Donald Trump. They didn't like the outcome of the election in 2016, so if we couldn't stop him from being elected, we can stop him from serving a full term. We are going to destroy him and everybody close to him. That's exactly what this was all about. Michael Flynn responded to some of this today, and he chose Salem Radio to do it. He was on with Dr. Gorka. Maybe you heard it, maybe you didn't. And I find this amazing as I was playing the Jim Jordan audio for you last segment. Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, the former National Security Advisor to President Trump for just a short period of time, he feels comfortable about the rule of law in America. I would never trust anybody in the Department of Justice again if I had gone through what Michael Flynn has gone through. I would never trust anybody in federal government. But he told Dr. Gorka he believes better than that. He is better than that, and he's optimistic about the rule of law because of Attorney General William Barr.
Or has been demonstrated to be a real sense of discovering just what happened prior to the election, after the election, during the transition, as you mentioned, and then also into the administration, the current administration itself. So I'll leave that for the legal wizards of the Department of Justice, led by Attorney General Barr. But I would just say that if mine is an example of shining a very bright spotlight on the truth, which is what it has done, then I feel optimistic that there will be other things that do emerge from this, where people in this country feel even, that it should be a point of pride. The rule of law in our country, Sebastian, should be a point of pride for our country, because unlike any other country in the world, that's the one thing that sets us apart, is that we have something called the rule of law, which has been at risk But I think under this Attorney General and the kinds of decisions that at least have affected my life and what we just watched an appeals court do today, I think it should give us all a sense of confidence that the justice system is returned.
The rule of law, according to Lieutenant General Flynn, is at risk. He's right. It's more than at risk. It's in serious jeopardy. It really is. It's in jeopardy of disappearing, quite frankly. And the only way that it has a chance of survival, and I'm not just saying this to turn this into a pro-Trump rally, but the only way the rule of law has a chance of survival in the United States is if William Barr or somebody like William Barr in a next Trump administration is indeed sitting in at the head of the Department of Justice. If you turn the rule of law over to those who broke it so violently to try to tear down Trump and to try to invalidate the 2016 election through the ridiculous Mueller probe, through the ridiculous Ukrainian investigation and impeachment, through all of that, if you turn this back over to those people, the rule of law in America is dead. And that's why, as General Flynn told Sebastian Gorka on America First, voting and elections matter.
3 points to it. It's faith in God, faith in the family that I have and the family that we have as a collective body of men and women that are American citizens that struggle every day to breathe the fresh air of liberty, and then faith in our friendship that we have developed throughout this crucible of a period of time that our country has gone through. So, faith, family, and friendship are really the components of all of us that we have to have to be able to survive these really difficult times that we all go through. I mean, what we went through, what my family has gone through, no American should go through again. No American family should have to be put through this. But at the same time, it really does bring out the best in the people that have to go through it, and it brings out the best in the American people. And I really, really am happy for America because the justice system prevailed in the decision today, and that's good for all of us. And it hopefully will renew some sense of confidence in the American public that are paying close attention to what's going on in our elections. And this is really another one of those marks in our history where you can truly say that voting matters and elections count. You know, that you have to get out there and you have to get into the fight every day.
You absolutely do, and you have to make sure that you elect somebody who is going to uphold the rule of law so that nobody ever has to go through what General Flynn and his family did, and that is exactly right. All right, we're going to talk more about General Flynn's essentially being cleared today by an appeals court. The Department of Justice request to drop the case has now been granted, and Congressman Jim Jordan will join us next here on The Larry Elder Show to discuss.
America, we have a country to save. And now, here's Larry.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lanhee Chen.
ADF, fighting for those whose liberties are being violated. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
We used to be able to testify in court, and we were believed. Now, unless there is a video from 3 different angles, no one cares what you have to say. With all this talk about racism and racist cops, I've never seen people treated differently because of their race. And while I know that cowards that have never done this job will call me a racist for saying it, all I've ever seen was criminal behavior and cops trying to stop it, and they didn't give a rip what their skin color was. I've seen cops help and save any type of race, gender, or ethnicity you can think of, and while that used to mean something, no one cares anymore. I've been called every name you can think of, and many of them with racial overtones, and it's never come from cops. I've watched African American cops take the brunt of this and even talked one rookie out of quitting after he was berated by a lot of cowards that had the same skin color as him. I've heard words I never heard before coming a cop. Uncle Tom, cracker, pig, and the N-word, just to name a few. I've heard them thousands of times, and never once did I see an officer retaliate. They just took it. The nasty words have now turned into rocks and bottles and gunfire. I've watched it happen to those around me, and I've seen the total destruction of their life. This job is a walking time bomb. And you can get cancelled or prosecuted on the very next call, even if you do everything right. No profession has to deal with that.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
Hi, everybody. Dennis Prager with you. Somebody sent me a video of two black guys who were big fans of America. And they showed video after video of quite awful conduct by police against whites. I remembered one of them where the guy was begging for his life, and it's not quite clear to anybody why he got killed. And said it. And they made the point, which is irrefutable. Had this been a black person, everybody would have known his name, and it would have been a major cause celeb in the United States. There is actually more of that against whites than against blacks, according to all the data that we have. The police are overwhelmingly not biased against blacks. And certainly not in any
All across America, The Larry Elder Show.
All across America, emanating from Cleveland, Ohio. Thanks for being with us. 34 minutes past the hour. Bob Brandt sitting in for the Sage once again. Speaking of Ohio, by the way.
The Inspector General of the Justice Department, Michael Horowitz, who wrote a 400-page report talking about those 17 lies, talking about all the abuses that took place in the Comey, Biden, Obama Justice Department. But guess what? This committee, the Judiciary Committee, didn't even get a chance to ask questions of Mr. Horowitz about that report because the chairman won't bring him in to testify. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that.
No one has ever seen anything quite like what is going on in this Democrat-controlled House. That is Ohio Congressman Jim Jordan, Ohio's 4th Congressional District Representative, ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, talking today about we can't call it an acquittal, but the essential dismissal of the charges per the DOJ, greenlit by an appeals court of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, and now Bill Barr and John Durham get to work on holding people accountable. Yep. Congressman Jordan, good to have you here on the Larry Elder Show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fine, Bob. Good to be with you.
Always good to talk to you, especially when we have good news to talk about here. Let's start there, and let's talk about this. I don't know what I'm happier about, Congressman, the fact that this 3.5-year nightmare is over for Lieutenant General Flynn and his family, or the fact that we learned today that so many of our suspicions were accurate, were true, including many of the things that you have been talking about this rising up all the way to the top of the Obama-Biden administration.
Yeah, no, it's a great day for Michael Flynn and his family. And as General Flynn said today, it's a great day for the country because now we are moving back to where America is supposed to be. Greatest nation in the world is supposed to be about the rule of law. It's about equal treatment under the law and not having people in high positions go after people because they don't like their politics. They don't like the fact that they're working for President Trump. So this was a big win. And understand this too. The court just didn't say, "Oh, it's okay for the Justice Department to dismiss the case." They told Judge Sullivan, "Dismiss the case." It's subtle, but it is a real difference. When what you're doing, Judge Sullivan, is dismiss this case, and everyone knows this is the right decision. So it's a good day for the country, and obviously a great day for General Flynn.
Yeah, it certainly is, and he has been very gracious, by the way. We were just playing some of his comments to Dr. Gorka on America First, and he certainly has a great deal of faith in the rule of law. He believes in Attorney General Barr, and he really thinks that he will make sure, and the DOJ will make sure this never happens to anybody else. But the real way, Congressman Jordan, and you and I have discussed this a number of times, the real way to make sure this never happens again is to have some scalps. And I don't mean that to be I don't mean that to be cavalier, but I mean seriously, there needs to be some punishment. And what we found today, handwritten notes taken by Peter Strzok, FBI agent Peter Strzok, revealing that the President Barack Obama directed the FBI to continue investigating General Flynn weeks before he became the National Security Advisor, and that Joe Biden personally suggested that maybe they should charge Flynn with violating the Logan Act. I mean, this is as big as it gets, sir.
No, it sure is. Now, recognize we have today what you just described, Joe Biden and Peter Strzok's note saying, use the Logan Act to go after General Flynn. And just remember, it was a few weeks back where we learned Joe Biden was one of the 38 people who unmasked Michael Flynn's name 49 times. Joe Biden was one of those individuals. And, of course, before both of these things, we learned both of these things, what did Joe Biden say? I had nothing to do with the Michael Flynn prosecution. So the Michael Flynn case. So that's big news. And then when you look at the dates, remember the notes we have from Peter Strzok take place in early January. So you got Comey, you got Biden, you got Susan Rice, you got President Obama in that meeting with Peter Strzok, and the notes Peter Strzok takes. So in that meeting, they're talking about the right people, President Obama says, to go after Michael Flynn. You got what Mr. Biden said, or what Vice President Biden said about the Logan Act. And, of course, you have Comey saying, well, we've looked at it. There's not really anything there. The call is legitimate. And yet they continue the setup because 2 days later, what happens? Comey goes to Trump Tower, briefs President-elect Trump on the dossier. The dossier he already knows is false. And then they go leak it to the press. This is all part of their plan to set up Michael Flynn 20 days later on January 24th when Jim Comey says, I snuck two guys in. He said this. I'm not making it. He said it in an interview. Oh, I got away with it. I snuck two guys in. We didn't follow the rules that you're supposed to. Didn't notify White House counsel. We snuck two guys in to set up a 3-star general. And today he was exonerated. So that's how bad this was. And you're right. The person that needs to be held responsible. Let me jump in there because I got a hard out here. But stay with us because we're going to continue this discussion about what was said after the fact. Coming up, Bob France in for Larry Elder. Staying with Jim Jordan next.
You're listening.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
It may not have been the appropriate response to shoot the man who was running away with the taser, and it makes sense to me. I want to make clear, though, to all listening, as much as a mistake as that might have been, and I have to emphasize might have because that'll be adjudicated. Leaping to the notion that it was done because the man was black is a non sequitur to me. I just don't understand how people get to that conclusion.
I agree. That's an absurdity. There's no way that officer woke up that morning and said, I'm going to go and kill a black person today. That's just a ridiculous thing to say. In fact, where I work is in underserved neighborhoods of color. And the vast majority of cops there, the majority of cops there are white, and we choose to work there because we want to help the community. We don't want to go there and hurt people in the community. We're there to help protect and serve that community. And I firmly believe that the vast majority of police officers, vast majority, wake up every morning wanting to do good and wanting to help. And those circumstances happen to be They shot a person who was black. They didn't shoot a person because he was black.
Right.
That's a ridiculous statement and ridiculous sentiment, and the people that perpetrate that, I think, are as guilty as anyone in this whole mess.
Yes, that's the reason I raised it. And every study that I have seen has confirmed that, including the National Academy of Sciences, speaking about the lack of racist bigotry in the police force. Last year, this report came out, ladies and gentlemen. National Academy of Sciences. That is the highest body of science in the United States of America.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
The new book, I don't know when he sleeps because he publishes a new book every 3 weeks, is Blitz. Trump will smash the left and win. First, tell us, David, what is the key to your optimism? Why are you so confident that in 136 days we're going to win?
I believe that this book I've written, Blitz, part of it is about how evil the Democrat Party has become. And part of it is about why Trump is able to survive all these attacks. He's the most slandered human being in the history of the human race. And yet he's managed to prevail, mainly because he doesn't back down. Mainly because when the racist left, and the only serious racism in America is anti-white racism. Everybody can see that now, and I say that as somebody who marched in this first civil rights march in 1948 before any of these looters were born. But Americans, first of all, they're not stupid, and they understand that the Democrats are compulsive liars and hypocrites. Everybody can see that the coronavirus has been manipulated by the Democrat Party. It's always about convicting Trump of crimes he didn't commit. You can't play in the park with your children or open a barber shop or a salon because of the virus, but you can have tens of thousands of people in the streets rioting and burning things if they're doing it for the Democrat cause.
Keep up with what's...
Welcome back to the Larry Elder Show.
Welcome back indeed. 43 minutes past, 17 minutes before the top of the hour. Bob France sitting in for the Sage of South Central live here in the ReliefFactor.com studios in Cleveland, Ohio. Ohio is also the home of Congressman Jim Jordan, who continues with us, talking about some great news today for Lieutenant General Michael Flynn, who is free and is free of all of the charges he's been dealing with over the course of the last 3.5 years, thanks to an order from an appeals court to federal judge Emmett Sullivan to drop the case against him per the Department of Justice's request. Congressman, we were talking about how this came about, and you tweeted today that, a couple of things here. First of all, General Flynn being set free is just one thing, but what we learned also in your judiciary hearings, that Peter Strzok's notes reveal it was Joe Biden's idea to invoke the Logan Act against Flynn. We know from Susan Rice's email to herself that President Obama was in on all of this as well. So now that we do see General Flynn never going to see the inside of a cell again, the question we have always been wondering is, when will the individuals responsible for his mistreatment, as well as that of other Trump administration officials or campaign officials, when are those people going to see the insides of cells?
Bill Barr has indicated that Mr. Durham expects to complete his investigation sometime this summer. Let's hope. Let's hope that someone is held accountable, because look, there's been some accountability. Congress can't put anyone in jail. We can investigate, but you look at but Bill Barr said a year ago that the top people at the FBI, he said there was a failure of leadership there. And that is the understatement of the year, because Comey was fired, McCabe was fired, under investigation, referred for criminal prosecution by the Inspector General. Jim Baker, the chief counsel, was demoted, left, and was under investigation by a U.S. attorney. And of course, Strzok and Page. Peter Strzok they were kicked off the Mueller team. Peter Strzok was fired. So there's been that kind of accountability. But the accountability the American people want, and I know you're talking about, Bob, is someone needs to go to jail for what took place here, what they put Mike Flynn through, what they put the country through, $30 million, 19 lawyers, all that Mueller investigation, and a host of other things. So let's hope that it happens. And we now also know that there was no predicate for this in the first place. Remember what we learned from Rick Grinnell releasing the transcripts. Brennan, Clapper, Yates, Susan Rice, they all said, I never saw any intelligence that showed any collusion between Trump and Russia to influence the election. But yet they did all this. They did this whole investigation, and they went after and set up Michael Flynn. So let's hope so, and we'll just have to wait and see what Mr. Durham comes up with.
You know, that is all 100% accurate. The problem that so many people have here, again, is and let's talk about the direction. Actually, two things. Right now, the country is in a bit of a mess because of the pandemic and because of all the violence and the racial strife going on because of the terrible mistreatment of George Floyd and the murder of George Floyd. But prior to this, Congressman, we had a fantastic economy. We had record low unemployment numbers for all different demographic groups. We had all kinds of tremendous positive growth in so many different ways. And this was despite, and this is where I want to bring it full circle here, despite 3 years or 2.5 years of Mueller investigations, despite the Congress being absolutely a do-nothing Congress with respect to actually helping the American people because they spent 2.5 years trying to undo the results of the 2016 election, despite the impeachment and the Ukraine hoax, despite all of that, we were still just absolutely killing it. So I'm going to go politics on you here now, Congressman, and ask you, how do you think the American people, knowing all of that and knowing what was responsible for all of that, and also knowing that the Democrats' presumptive nominee, Joe Biden, literally lied? As you tweeted, May of this year, he said he knew nothing about the Flynn investigation, and now we have handwritten notes from Strzok proving he absolutely did and was suggesting how they pursue it.
Yeah, no, you know how it's all going to shake out is the American people are going to show up on election day and make sure Donald Trump has another 4 years. That's how you can only keep doing this, calling the American people racist, calling the American people all kinds of names. At some point they say enough is enough. We are not that. What happened to George Floyd is a tragedy. His family deserves justice. It never should have happened. But we are not what the left keeps calling the American people. And so at some point they're going to say enough is enough. You're seeing it already, Bob. When I drive across Western Ohio, we see Trump flags everywhere. You see the American flag, and right next to it, you see a Trump flag. So that's how the American people are going to react. You know, the cancel culture can try to cancel people and do all the things they want to do. But the great thing about this amazing country is on Election Day, you get to go in, and it's just you and God in that voting booth, and you can vote how you want, and there is no way the cancel brigade out there can cancel you out of anything. So that's how I think Americans show up, and that's why you don't see it in the polling, but you see it on Election Day. They're fed up with all this. They want accountability. They know President Trump, as you said, Bob, is getting results in spite of everyone in the mainstream media, all the Democrats, and frankly, when he first started, some of the Republicans against him, he still got amazing results.
Congressman, let me pivot to one other thing before you go, and we appreciate your time this evening here on the Larry Elder Show. I wish you and your colleagues on the House side would have an opportunity to take up and discuss and amend and work with the Senate's police reform bill. The one that was put forth by the GOP was led by Tim Scott. It was an amazing piece of work that they did, trying to literally meet every expectation that has been expressed from across the country in the wake of this terrible thing with George Floyd. They came out with this very, very important bill, and Tim Scott begged them on the floor today, begged the Democrats in the Senate to put this thing down on the floor for debate. He said, I'm open to amendments, I'm open to discussion, I'm open to everything. Let's get this thing going. And they killed it before it even could have discussion, much less get passed and sent to your side of the Congress. Why are they not serious about police reform if this is what the entire country has been on fire for the last month?
Yeah, it's all politics. And look, I just talked to Tim Scott. I was walking over to the Senate side, just talked to him about 30 minutes ago. And I would encourage all your listeners, all Larry's listeners as well, to pray for Tim Scott. He's a good man trying to put together a good piece of legislation that is helpful and recognizes the role of our police and how valuable they are, but also recognizes there's some reform that needs to happen. And God bless him, he's been working his tail off. But the Democrats don't want real reform. They don't want a solution. They want the politics of this. We offered 12 amendments last week in the markup on their bill in the House. 12 thoughtful, good amendments. They didn't take one of them. We were in that committee markup for almost 11 hours. They didn't take one of our amendments in the House Judiciary Committee. Tim brings his bill to the floor today, and they don't let it proceed for debate and a vote on that bill. So that's just unfortunately where the Democrats are. Again, I think the American people are going to see it for what it is. And an election day.
Larry Elder.
You call it politics. It's the ugliest politics ever when Nancy Pelosi literally blamed Republicans for the murder of George Floyd. Literally said Republicans are trying to get away with murder when Minneapolis has been run by Democrat policies for decades. Congressman Jim Jordan, thank you for fighting the good fight. Congratulations to General Flynn, and thanks so much for the time tonight. That's Jim Jordan joining us. Bob France sitting in for Larry Elder right there.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
I am reading from the Financial Times headline, Pompeo castigates Bolton as a traitor. Mike Pompeo, the U.S. Secretary of State, has hit out at John Bolton, calling his former colleague a traitor and accusing Donald Trump's ex-national security advisor of lies in his new memoir. John Bolton is spreading a number of lies, fully spun half-truths and outright falsehoods, Mr. Pompeo said about the room where it happened. Mr. Bolton's new book that is scheduled for release next Tuesday. In a statement headlined, I was in the room too, Mr. Pompeo said it was both sad and dangerous that John Bolton's final public role is that of a traitor who damaged America by violating his sacred trust with its people. Strong words. I just don't like memoirs which are tell-alls. No, I read memoirs. I'm reading Bob Gates's new book, which will have anecdotes in it. I'm sure he submitted it for the review of the appropriate authorities to make sure that we do not give away any methods or source. It results in death. That's why the Pentagon Papers was not a moment of virtue for this country. It was a moment of assassination by Daniel Ellsberg and those who chaired it. It resulted in the deaths of people who could be traced in their cooperation with the United States government by the North Vietnamese after they triumphed after the United States cut and ran from Vietnam in 1975, excuse me. So no, I just don't believe in it. You got to put your books in for review. There have been memoirs by Secretary of Defense Rumsfeld, by Vice President Cheney, by George W. Bush, by Condoleezza Rice. They all get submitted to the same process. And guess what? It's not quick. And Ambassador Bolton ought to have followed the rules.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lanhee Chen.
He's always outstanding in committee, and he is always outstanding on the air, and I really appreciate him coming on. Bob France with you once again, in for the sage of South Central, Larry Elder. Phone lines will be open, but we are a little bit guest-heavy, so bear with us as far as getting your own voice heard at 888-971-SAGE. That's 888-971-7243, but we are heavy on guests. As a matter of fact, coming up after the top of the hour, we're going to talk to a gentleman. He's an author and a journalist. Vince Everett Ellison. And I love the headline, by the way. Black journalist available. Why does that matter? Well, you know why it matters. That's why Larry Elder is doing promos tonight. He's doing a promotional event for Uncle Tom because it matters. When African Americans do not toe the Democrat Party line, it's newsworthy. They got this news right. Black author available. No hate crime. FBI determines noose in Bubba Wallace's garage to be a rope handle for the garage door, which is exactly what it is, and we're going to talk a lot more about that. FBI concluded no federal crime committed in Bubba Wallace's noose case, and Vince Everett Ellison is going to talk about it. He has written a book called, I love this, it's a lengthy one, it must be a big book, The Iron Triangle, or small font, The Iron Triangle, Inside the Liberal Democrat Plan to Use Race to Divide Christians and America in Their Quest for Power and How We Can Defeat Them. That is one heck of a book title. And I interviewed Vince about a different matter involving race in America on my local show in Cleveland, and I'm very much looking forward to talking to him. And I think you will like this as well. Also, I want you to be aware that at the top of the third hour, and if you can't listen to all 3 hours, you should really try your best, or maybe become an Eldorado and you can listen to all the old shows on podcast at LarryElder.com. But Michael Medved, who, of course, is our Salem colleague, hosts a national show himself. Michael Medved, of course, also just a renowned author and historian. I called Michael the moment Tim Kaine, Senator Tim Kaine, former Hillary Clinton running mate Tim Kaine, yeah, that Tim Kaine, the moment that Tim Kaine declared that slavery was invented by Americans, slavery wasn't inherited, or the United States didn't inherit slavery, but it created slavery. The moment I heard him say that last week, and I know Larry has talked about it, the first name I thought of was Michael Medved, because I read a book by Michael Medved a number of years ago about the 10 big lies about America, and one of them was slavery being a unique and specific and universal unique institution, or not a universal one, to the United States of America. He is an expert on this, and he's going to talk to us about it and the role that that type of mentality plays in race relations in America today. All right. Once again, Bob France in for the great sage of South Central. We're going to talk race in America with Vince Ellison coming up after the top of the hour, right here on The Larry Elder Show.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindau.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Trending now on The Larry Elder Show.
I'm talking with Kate Anderson, Senior Counsel with Alliance Defending Freedom. Kate Anderson, this could have been a pretty easy fix. If Congress had wanted to expand the definition of sex to include sexual orientation, they could have done that.
Yes, and actually this issue was before Congress on numerous occasions, and Congress has not added the concepts of sexual orientation or gender identity to this federal employment law. So Justice Alito, when he was writing his dissenting opinion in this case, he said that the court was legislating from the bench by making a change that Congress had declined to make, and there's definitely some truth in that.
I know that the ADF has been involved in representing female athletes who have been challenged by transgender male athletes. How does this decision affect all of that?
The case you're talking about in Connecticut, we represent a couple of girls who, in that state, there are 2 male athletes who identify as female who have taken 15 state track and field championship records over the last 3 years, and all of the opportunities that come with those. So there's definitely an issue before the courts on women's sports and the fairness for women to be able to compete and to be able to enjoy the equal opportunities, and particularly the scholarship opportunities that come from that. So this decision did not reach that, and the majority opinion actually said it doesn't reach women's athletics, but we have every expectation that activists will try to use the logic to move it into that context, and we will be there to try to protect women's equal opportunities.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
The president's concern seems to be that tearing down statues leads to a slippery slope.
This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week? And is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Okay, well, I'll tell you where it stops. Somewhere. Anytime someone asks, where does it stop, the answer is always somewhere. You might let your kid have Twizzlers, but not inject black tar heroin. You don't just go, well, after the Twizzlers, where does it stop?
Of course, now we know Trump was right. John Oliver would be forced to admit today, if he had a shred of integrity, maybe he does, Trump was right, and I was wrong. Back in 2017, when President Trump was concerned about George Washington coming down, I mocked him, John Oliver would say in that thick British accent. You know what he'd say now? What would he say now? Well, yeah, I'm Trump was wrong then and he's wrong now. We're watching these statues coming down all over America. They're actually talking about the changing the name of Yale in a real ironic twist. It turns out that Yale wasn't such a good guy when it comes to the issue of slavery in 2020 terms, because that's what we do. We apply what we know now, the hideousness, the stench of slavery, of owning human beings like cattle. And we say in 2020, well, of course, we're repulsed that this was perhaps America's past that was so egregious.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
The taking down of statues that have been there in some cases for more than a century. What is Dave Bratt's analysis about what that's really about?
And the Marxists are alive and well. And so we thought it was done with the Soviet Union, but we didn't finish the job. And now the Cultural Revolution of Mao is finding its way here. And the Chinese separated the people from their families, from their religion, from their tradition, from their culture. You have underground churches. They're happy with the messaging that's going here. So what at first started as a certain type of message, now the Marxists are in full control. And what do they want to do? And they've made it very clear in the last few days, it's come around all full circle. They want to separate us from our history. They want to separate us from our religion. And in the last day, now one of the leaders of one of the radical movements is saying, let's go after the churches and the statues of Christ and the stained glass windows. And that, of course, is their strategic error of the first magnitude. because they're bumping into 70 million Protestants, 70 million Catholics. But that's what Marx did, right? He was the first identity politics. He separated the capitalists from the workers. That didn't work out so good. So now they just separate you from everybody. You're the oppressor or you're the oppressed. And they put you in a bucket, a category, and they come after you. And there's no repentance. There's no forgiveness of sins. And Marx, of course, said that ethics and religion is the superstructure and it's all fake anyway. So if you're a naive American and you think that everybody believes that it's wrong to kill because that's in the Judeo-Christian
Salem Radio Network, thank you so much for being with us. We got a lot of very important news to discuss as we work to save our great republic. You know how I love that. You know, Larry has played that at the beginning of his program, at the beginning of hours of his program for years. We've got a country to save. Never has it been more true, more accurate, more imperative than it is right now, because our country is literally being assaulted. And I don't mean a few people being assaulted, as bad as that is. The country, its foundation, its principles, all being assaulted. Its rules, its law and order, its construct, its economy, its economic model. It is all under serious attack. And we've got a lot of work to do to try to save it. And that's what we're here for. Thanks for being with us. You can be with us more personally at 888-971-SAGE. That's 888-971-7243. But I will beg your indulgence as I welcome a guest that I have spoken with before on my local program in Cleveland. His name is Vince Everett Ellison. He's an author of a book that takes a little bit of a breath here to read, the title of which to read. The Iron Triangle, Inside the Liberal Democrat Plan to Use Race to Divide Christians and America in Their Quest for Power and How We Can Defeat Them. It's a mouthful, but I can tell you from my last conversation, it is worth the read. Vince Everett Ellison joins us now on the Larry Elder Show. Vince, thank you for the time. How are you?
Mr. Trans, I'm doing great. How are you?
I am fantastic. It's good to hear your voice again. I really, truly enjoyed our last conversation in Cleveland, and I know that our listeners will. You bring it true, you bring it straight, you bring it direct, and you don't care what people think about it. And that's what we need right now, Vince Everett Ellison, is truth. Because we couldn't get any out of Talladega until 15 FBI windbreakers descended upon the place to look at a garage door pull handle and to determine that that is indeed a pull handle, like the ones hanging from all of the other garages in Talladega, and that have been there since at the very latest last October, and not placed there because Bubba Wallace's car was in that particular garage bay. Vince, this story has kind of captivated the sports nation for the last few days, and last night we found out the truth. What the heck happened?
Well, the left needed this to be true. They wanted it to be true. See, we know them much better than they know us. They've been reading caricatures of who we are. We know exactly who they are. They really think that NASCAR people are people that want to hang black people around their necks and kill them. They think because a person waving a Confederate flag that they hate all black people. That's just absolutely positively not correct. I was born in the South. I live in the South. They're the best people in the world, and these leftists from the North and from California have to believe this because it is their narrative. And as I said before, if they do not have racism, they have to create it. It has to be there for them to win. And they try to scare the black community with it. And I'm out here telling them that they're the enemy. And the Iron Triangle, most black preachers, most black politicians, and most black civic organizers are their foot soldiers, and they are the ones that control the black community for them, and they get paid by these liberals to keep the black community under control, keep them afraid, and keep them divided, and keep Christians divided so we can't come together and run these satanic liberals out.
Powerful. The Iron Triangle. We're talking to Vince Everett Ellison, and it's hard to dispute any single thing that you just said, and yet it's being disputed. Let's go back to the specifics now of Bubba Wallace. Some people are calling him Bubba Smollett. This is Jussie Smollett 2.0. Some are calling him Jussie Wallace. Either way, and here's the story: the FBI came out with their results of their short investigation yesterday and made a declaration that this noose, if you will, which is nothing more than a garage pull handle tied into a loop so that it's easier to pull down, which again, there is video and there are pictures of several of them on garage bays all up and down the row there at Talladega. So they came out and said this has been there for a long time, long before Bubba Wallace was assigned garage bay number 4 for the race at Talladega. So they said this was absolutely not a federal hate crime. This was not a hate crime of any kind. The existence of that pull handle / noose was there for a long time. And yet, Vince, last night, Bubba Wallace went on with Don Lemon and doubled down on all of it.
Don, the image that I have and I have seen of what was hanging in my garage is not a garage pool. I've been racing all my life. We've raced out of hundreds of garages that never had garage pools like that. So people that want to call it a garage pool and put out old videos and photos of knots being in their as their evidence, go ahead. But from the evidence that we have,
I'm just going to stop it right there. He's basically saying people are going to put out videos as their evidence. Go ahead. But, well, that's the end of the story, because literally the video evidence is from the garages where he is and where at Talladega, where this alleged hate incident took place. I don't understand, Vince. I know people want to argue and they need it to be true, but when it's been exposed as being a hoax, how can you go on live television and declare the opposite?
Because Bubba has been taught to be a victim of the Iron Triangle, and the Democratic Party needs victims. And Bubba all his life, like a lot of young black millennials, have been taught. They've been taught this now, that the greatest form of citizenship is not entrepreneurship, it is not family, it is not service. It is victimization and protest. If you look at the civil rights movement and compare it to basically white culture, white conservative culture, white conservative culture are the guys running in the bullets on D-Day. It's George Washington at Valley Forge in Yorktown. It's Gettysburg. These guys are getting the heck beat out of them on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. They're laying down and getting shot. They're getting jumped on and hit with water hoses and bit by dogs. They believe, and the left has used black pain for white liberal gain for the last 60 years. And they are very good at exploiting young black athletes, whether they be Muhammad Ali, whether they be Kaepernick, whether they be this young man now, whether they be the guy that came out and said he was gay and tried to join the NFL, Sam. They are good at exploiting
the football player, right.
for their pain.
Michael Sams.
And yes, and they're doing it again. So now they got Bubba Wallace. He's driving a Black Lives Matter car. I don't know if Bubba knows that Black Lives Matter is an anti-Christian, Marxist, anti-Western civilization, anti-American group, and he's driving that around NASCAR, and they still treat him with respect. They have to have victims. That's who they are. And if they don't have them, they will make them up. They have a paranoia about white Americans. And look, and they say they're Christians, but they can't be if they are fearing white Americans like they do. Because I have no fear. As a Christian man, you can't have fear. That's why the one thing we have to do to break this is to remind them who they are. 85% of black people profess to be Christian. 75% of white people profess to be Christian. If you are a Christian, you cannot be a victim. Jesus says, fear not. He says, you are more than a conqueror. And yet we walk around, he tells us to forgive, he tells us to love, yet we walk around screaming, no justice, no peace, burning up, pillaging, fighting, disfacing government property. This is not of God. And this is because these liberals on the left have gone into the black churches and they've taken them over. The Jeremiah Wright thing of GD America, all of that. And Jesus has said you cannot serve two masters. You must love one and hate the other. We have chosen the master of the dark side. And this is where all the hate comes from. This is why you see conservatives sitting back watching this saying, wow, these people are burning down their houses again. And they've been burning down their houses and rioting for the past 60 years. Conservatives and Republicans don't do it. It's always these people on the left, and it's always these Democrats. They have lied to the black community for the past 50 years. They told them, if you give us your children, we'll educate them. They lied. They said, if you kick out your men, we'll provide for you. They lied. They said that if you give us your gun, we'll protect you. They lied. A story came out on June 4th in the Washington Post that says since 1968, there hasn't been any narrowing in the wealth gap between black and white citizens. Since 1968, Harvard did a study that's cited by the DNC on their website that says schools are more segregated now than they were before Brown versus Board of Education. We have 10 times more black men in prison. The black family has been decimated. We are boarding.
Vince, let me jump in for a second here because let me jump in for a second, Vince Everett Ellison, because I got to take a hard break. But you're on to some very important information, some facts that people need to hear. So I'm going to ask you to hold over. We're going to take a short time out. We'll come back with author Vince Everett Ellison here on The Larry Elder Show.
All true, all devastating.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
So the Attorney General of Massachusetts, she says sometimes you have to burn down everything before you can rebuild it. She's talking to the Chamber of Commerce when she says this. You have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who on her Instagram feed had a 101 guide on how not to get caught by the police.
Wait, before you go to AOC, let's go back to this is the AG in Massachusetts.
I'm paraphrasing. Actually, I have the quote here. I can read from it directly.
I heard it, and it was very clear that she was praising the arson.
It says, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yes, America is burning, but that's how forests grow. This is Maura Healey, the Massachusetts Attorney General, speaking to the Chamber of Commerce.
I just want to pause on that. The idea that the Attorney General of Massachusetts, faced with arson of people's property, people's businesses. We're not talking about forest fires. We are talking about human beings who have built businesses.
Let's go a level deeper, though, Eric. The left does not believe in private property. And this is something I've been talking about for years. And I've been challenged by the intelligentsia of the radical left by saying, no, we believe in private property. We actually look at their fundamental writings. They don't believe that individuals should be able to own property. And this is fundamental to Western society. And so a lot of these radicals have been indoctrinated in our universities to believe that somehow you can make something good out of burning down our entire civilization.
Right.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Issued June 24th, 2020. Re. Michael T. Flynn, petitioner on emergency petition for a writ of mandamus from the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. Order. Upon consideration of the emergency petition for a writ of mandamus, the responses thereto, and the reply, the briefs of amici curiae in support of the parties, and the argument by the counsel, it is ordered that Flynn's petition for a writ of mandamus be granted. General Flynn, welcome to America First. Are you on the line?
I sure am, Sebastian. Yeah, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate the support from you and your listeners during this almost 4 years of going through this. And I'll have a lot more to say later on, but that was a very powerful motion that the appeals court had, and rightly so. They're basically following the law, and I think it renews, in some respects, a sense of confidence in the justice system of America today. So it's really, really great news for our family and great news for American justice.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
But I'm shocked not by his book, I haven't read it, but by what Judge Royce Lambert wrote in his ruling about the book. The judge concluded, quote, "The court is persuaded that defendant Bolton likely jeopardized national security by disclosing classified information in violation of his non-disclosure agreement obligations. Bolton may indeed have caused the country irreparable harm." Jeopardized national security. How much damage did this book do, Mr. Pompeo?
So, Hugh, I haven't had a chance to read the book either. I've seen a number of the
Larry's father, Staff Sergeant Randolph Elder, says hard work wins. You get out of life what you put into it. And now, here's Larry Elder.
And sitting in for the sage of South Central, Larry Elder. Larry is promoting his movie tonight, Uncle Tom, documentary that you can get at UncleTom.com. Most people are completely oblivious to the history of the Democrat Party and its involvement in racism. The true story is told in the movie Uncle Tom, starring Larry Elder, Candace Owens, Herman Cain, Brandon Tatum, and more. Hear their stories of how their lives were changed when they finally figured out the truth. Go to UncleTom.com, enter the discount code Larry, and receive 20% off the price of the on-demand rental or the cost of the DVDs. Definitely worth your time. We continue now with Vince Everett Ellison. Vince is an author, and his book is called The Iron Triangle, Inside the Liberal Democrat Plan to Use Race to Divide Christians and America in Their Quest for Power and How We Can Defeat Them. And Vince, I wanted you to hold over because you were just about to get into more depth on some facts and some statistics and things that people need to know about the black experience in America and the Democrats that manipulate and use blacks for their own purposes. And specifically, you also mentioned Black Lives Matter and how they really need for Bubba Wallace to have been the victim of a hate crime. They really need these kinds of things. So I want to ask you this, and I'll give you wide latitude here on this. How do you want to see this play out? Talking about the statue removal in all of these cities, the chop zones being created, the attacks on federal buildings and on state buildings, the protests and riots that are now a month old and they have nothing to do with George Floyd anymore. Black Lives Matter is driving it all, and you pointed out what they are. They are rooted in Marxist ideology, and they have their goal to destroy Christianity, to destroy the American nuclear family, and so on and so forth. So everything that's been going on has been going on for a month. It has to end at some point. When will that end, and how do you want to see this come out for all Americans?
It will not end. Martin Luther King Jr. said in his I Have a Dream speech after he told black people they were not free. He said 100 years after the Emancipation Proclamation, the Negro is still not free. That wasn't true. I was born free. My freedom is an unalienable right. And John Locke said that these rights were given you by God. He said these freedoms could not be taken away from you. They were unsellable. They could not be given away. And he also said that, we come to government for these unalienable rights, many of them being our right to keep and bear arms, to defend ourselves, to have property, a right to life. He said we come to government for those. Locke said those governments are gifts from God. They don't come from government. They cannot be taken away. They cannot be sold. They are absolute. So he put that in there, and then he said, they asked us, when will we be satisfied? He said, we will never be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. That's just a fancy way of saying never. This fight will continue until we as Americans understand one thing, that we cannot live in condemnation. If we are Christians or if we are sane, we must live. We must understand that all we can do is repent and say we are sorry, and then you cannot depend on the person that has been harmed to forgive you, because then they control you. That's where their control comes from. You control yourself. And all you can say is, man, I'm sorry. And forgiveness cannot be earned, it cannot be expected, nor can it be wanted. All we can do is repent. But America has paid anyway, with almost 1 million lives in the Civil War, almost $22 trillion since the Great Society. And they won't even say thank you. A lot of them are out there fat, rioting, tearing up buildings with government-paid phones and fat on government cheese. And they won't even say thank you. So what do we have to say? When a black person comes to you and starts talking about white privilege and starts talking about white racism, you tell them this. You are a slave looking for a master, and I will not be your master. If you want one, go to one of these white liberals and ask them to be your master, because I refuse. I will treat you as my equal, whether you like it or not, and I will assist you in any way that I can. As a Christian, as an American, as a Jew and an American, as a Muslim and an American, and I'm going to help you move yourself up, but if you refuse to move yourself up, stay where you are. I will not carry your burden. You are not going to make me live in condemnation anymore. They will take and take and take and take until the host is dead, and America has to say enough. I am not going to pay for what my forefathers did. Nobody should, because nobody's hands are clean in the path of our nation. Slavery was done by everyone. You had black slaves, you had black slave owners, white slave owners. You had black people that sold us in Africa into slavery. Nobody's hands are clean. And our history, good, bad, ugly, indifferent, is ours. And we learn from it, like we do from the Old Testament of the Bible and from our original Constitution. We don't change them. We look at them and we say, wow, man, in the New Testament, Vince Ellison was looked upon as 3/5 of a human being. And a woman couldn't vote. But what did we do, y'all? We changed it. And we look back and we were amazed at how far we've come. How would we know ourselves today if we did not know that history? So we looked at it. And no person in the past can survive if we try to put him on the pedestal of Jesus Christ and try to say he was perfect. No. We look at the good things they've done, the great things they've done. And that's why we memorize them. Because no one is going to be perfect. They did great things. We should aspire to do great things, but no one is going to be perfect. And when we start pulling up their past and say they should be taken down and forget the great things they've done, we do all of ourselves damage and harm. This is a Taliban action. This has nothing to do with them. It has everything to do with destroying America and destroying us as a people.
I was going to try to squeeze another question in, but yeah, I could tell I should not slow your roll. You were on fire, and Vince, I cannot tell you how impressive that is. Everything that you're saying is 100% accurate, and you literally would have to be willfully blind to not see that. From the white perspective, from the black perspective, from the American perspective. The only thing that I will hope that you're wrong about is when you say that it will never end. And of course, I don't mean the struggle, because the struggle and the conflict between races and these kinds of things, yeah, I think that will always be to an extent. But the violence and the nightly looting and the nightly burning and the nightly destroying and the nightly protests and so on and so forth, and the attacks and the assaults, those have to end at some point for a decent, for the rule of law to take over, so that we can live in a decent civil society in which people feel safe. And that's the part that I certainly. You are
a good man, but I've been around these people all my life. I worked in the prison for 5 years.
Oh boy!
This is where I got to know the underbelly of society. Some people are psychotic.
I believe you.
About maybe 1/10 of 1% of all Americans are psychotic, and they are evil just because they are, and they gravitate to the Democrat Party and they rise to the top of it, and they will always use that power to do harm.
I believe every word of it, Vince Everett Ellison. I do, and I apologize for the interruption, but I do want to give your book one more time before we're done, and I thank you so much for the visit. The Iron Triangle. Read this. The Iron Triangle, inside the liberal Democrat plan to use race to divide Christians and America in their quest for power and how we can defeat them. The author is Vince Everett Ellison. I'm Bob France, in for Larry Elder. Back after this.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
If you could ask one question to black or white leftists, if you only have a chance to ask one, and there are a lot of contenders for that title, but I would ask this: is white racism the greatest problem in American black life? Or is the 80% out of wedlock birth rate, not being born with a man married to your mother, which is the bigger problem in black life? Now, to even ask that question now would probably get you untwittered, just to ask the question. The suppression of free speech is unprecedented in American history. Do you realize the time we are living through? And it is being done not by the government. Not at all. It is being done in the private sphere by the tech companies that run everything: Twitter, YouTube, Google, Facebook. This is unprecedented in history, let alone American history. There was really one thing that liberals, or even, well, there weren't that many leftists, liberals and conservatives always agreed on free speech, which is why you should see No Safe Spaces. Two really important movies out now, Uncle Tom and No Safe Spaces. You owe it to the country and to yourself to see both.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
The president's concern seems to be that tearing down statues leads to a slippery slope.
This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it
Call the Larry Elder Show now at 888-971-SAGE. That's 888-971-7243. Eldorado's Let Larry Know What's on Your Mind.
That's a great idea. Dial it up right now. We've got a half hour now of open phone lines for you. I do have Michael Medved coming up at the top of the hour, top of the next hour. And thanks so much for being with us. Bob France sitting in for the Sage once again. Want to remind you that we appreciate you building MyPillow into the amazing company it is today. That's why Mike Lindell, the inventor and CEO, want to give back to our listeners, Larry's and mine. Great discounts on all MyPillow products. Going to MyPillow.com right now. Click on the radio listener specials. See some amazing offers. Buy one, get one free on a variety of the amazing products, including the Supima MyPillows, the Giza Dream Sheets, the MyPillow towels, the Roll and Go Anywhere pillows, duvet covers, Giza pillowcases, bolster pillows, neck pillows, you name it. It's on sale. Buy one, get one free. Plus, if you buy Mike Lindell's book, What Are the Odds? from crack addict to CEO, you'll get free shipping and a $25 gift card. Just go to mypillow.com, enter the promo code Larry, or call 800-890-1843, and be sure to use the promo code Larry. All right, phone lines are open, and I want to follow briefly on something that my guest, Vince Everett Ellison, said last segment. We talked about the Bubba Wallace latest race hoax, right? The NASCAR driver who claimed, or whose team claimed, that there's a noose hanging in his garage. And this is payback by some racists in NASCAR for Bubba Wallace complaining and having the Confederate flag banned from NASCAR events. So some people tried to defend him, saying, hey, it's not his fault. He said he didn't see it. He only heard about it. But yet he ran to The View, and he ran to every camera and microphone he could find to trumpet its truth. And then he just basked in the adulation of all the NASCAR community at their race a couple of days ago, as they all screamed Black Lives Matter and we're with you, Bubba, blah, blah, blah. Because what a terrible thing to have happen to somebody. To have a noose placed, obviously in an attempt to intimidate the only African-American full-time driver on the circuit, on the NASCAR circuit. Well, as we talked about, the FBI did an investigation because they wanted to find out if a hate crime had been committed. The FBI looked around and found a few things. Number one, that pull handle on the garage door, that pull rope, had been tied into a hand loop to pull the garage door down easier since at least October of last year. About what? Let's see. This is June, so 9 months before Bubba Wallace could possibly have been assigned garage bay number 4, where the loop was tied into the rope there. That's number one, and the reason why they dismissed the entire thing and said this is not a hate crime. Number two, video now exists of all of the other garage bays there at Talladega showing the same thing on all of the ropes that are used as pull handles. They are tied into a pull handle so that it's easier to pull the garage door down. And I asked Vince Ellison, my guest, what do you make of that, and why did they go through this elaborate hoax? He said that because they needed it to be true. They need victims. They need black victims in order to perpetuate the narrative that white America is out to get them. And that's why Bubba Wallace went on Don Lemon last night and doubled down, despite the existence of all of the proof in the world that this entire thing is bogus. And that's also why people like Gayle King go on television on CBS and look at all of the facts and the evidence presented by the FBI and say things like this.
Yep. And so now for anybody to question it and say it's not a noose, it was a rope pull, whatever it is, yep, to say it's not a hate crime, I still don't really know what happened here. Yeah. But it's very painful to see how personally he's taking it. I
don't really know what happened here. Yes, you do. You know exactly what happened here. A hoax happened here. And they happen all the time. Because what Vince Ellison said is absolutely correct. There needs to be victims in order to find the perpetrators. We've got to create victims, and if we can't find victims, we'll make them up. We'll make them up so that we can then invent perpetrators, especially ones that we don't have to catch and try, because then we don't have to prove it. All we have to do is say, this terrible thing happened, somebody did it, we don't know who, but that somebody represents hatred, and therefore it's evidence of the anti-minority hatred in America. You know what this reminded me of? Do you remember a couple of years back when LeBron James claimed that somebody spray painted the N-word on his garage door in one of his mansions in Los Angeles? And then when police came to investigate, there was nothing there because they painted over it already. Didn't take a picture, didn't have video, didn't let anybody see it. They just said that it happened. Why? To create, continue the narrative. Bob Franson for Larry, back after this.
You're listening to The Larry Elder Show.
You remember that?
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
If you could ask one question to black or white leftists, if you only have a chance to ask one, and there are a lot of contenders for that title, but I would ask this: is white racism the greatest problem in American black life? Or is the 80% out of wedlock birth rate, not being born with a man married to your mother, which is the bigger problem in black life? Now, to even ask that question now would probably get you untwittered, just to ask the question. The suppression of free speech is unprecedented in American history. Do you realize the time we are living through? And it is being done not by the government. Not at all. It is being done in the private sphere by the tech companies that run everything: Twitter, YouTube, Google, Facebook. This is unprecedented in history, let alone American history. There was really one thing that liberals, or even, well, there weren't that many leftists, liberals and conservatives always agreed on free speech, which is why you should see No Safe Spaces. Two really important movies out now, Uncle Tom and No Safe Spaces. You owe it to the country and to yourself to see both.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
The president's concern seems to be that tearing down statues leads to a slippery slope.
This week it's Robert E. Lee. I noticed that Stonewall Jackson's coming down. I wonder, is it George Washington next week? And is it Thomas Jefferson the week after? You know, you really do have to ask yourself, where does it stop?
Okay, well, I'll tell you where it stops. Somewhere. Anytime someone asks, where does it stop, the answer is always somewhere. You might let your kid have Twizzlers, but not inject black tar heroin. You don't just go, well, after the Twizzlers, where does it stop?
Welcome back to the Larry Elder Show.
Yes, indeed, 17 minutes before the top of the hour, Bob France sitting in for Larry Elder, who is promoting Uncle Tom, his new book. I bet Vince Ellison has heard that a few times in his career as an author and a public speaker. Did a tremendous job. And I want to hear from you now. I heard from Vince. I heard from Jim Jordan in the first hour. I do want to hear from you. 888-971-SAGE. That's 888-971-7243. If you want to talk about Bubba Wallace and the latest hoax, the latest race crime hoax, you can do that. If you want to talk about General Flynn being freed today, you can do that. If you want to answer the question that I asked my guest, Vince Everett Ellison, I asked him how he thinks this is going to end. And he said it's never going to end. And I said, well, certainly there's going to be discord among certain people of the races. That'll never end, as Martin Luther King said. And he said, no, he said, you're a good guy, but you don't understand. I know these people. I met them. I talked to them in prison. And I don't know if he meant he was in or if he was visiting or whatever the case might be, but he said, you don't know these people the way I do. This is never going to end. The violence and the crime and the assault and the vandalism, all in the name of hatred of another race, he said, is going to continue. And that is very, very disheartening. Let's go to Los Angeles, and we'll talk to Rick, who is on the Larry Elder Show. Hi, Rick. It's Bob sitting in for Larry Elder. Go right ahead. Hello, Rick. Can you hear me? All right, I'm not able to bring it up. And maybe there it is. Now we got him up there. Rick, can you hear me now?
Oh, hi. I'm
yes,
great,
sir.
Bob. Thanks. Yeah. I was watching a clip on Laura Ingraham the other night regarding just this absolute vitriol from one of the protesters towards police officers, right?
I saw.
And I sat there and I realized, oh, yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And I sat there and I realized, here's this outright attempt to use reverse discrimination to right a wrong. Now, granted, through our history, yeah, there's been racists that they see a black person and get a visceral response, and they start going, well, hey, you can't trust, quote, those people, end quote, et cetera, et cetera. So now what the radical left is trying to do, they're trying to do this to police officers, white or black. Quote, unquote, those cops, can't trust them, out to get you, blah, blah, blah. It's really a sick twist on trying to right a wrong in our society.
Well, you're right. It's a lot of those things, Rick, and thanks so much for the phone call. What I think it mostly was, though, it was an attempt to lure the officer into striking. If you have not seen the video, if you don't know what our caller was just talking about, you need to get online. See, the problem is I don't want to promote it on Twitter or Facebook. I have decided on my own program in Cleveland, and I'm going to continue with it here on Larry's show. I'm not promoting Twitter or Facebook. They are satanic organizations. There are platforms that are rife with evil and with judgment and with contempt that really do nothing but harm other people. That's the intent of them. And I still am on them. I still do use them. Sometimes you do have to dance with the devil, as I say, in order to combat some of the things, but I really have refrained from promoting Twitter or Facebook. Having said that, if you are online in any of those platforms, you can look up the video we're talking about. And what the individuals are doing is they get literally within inches of the faces of the officers, screaming at the top of their lungs with all kinds of insults, insulting their mothers, insulting the officers' families, calling them every profane and vile name that you can think of, and then daring the officers to do something about it. I can get as close to you as I want, blah, blah, blah. And essentially, they're just daring the officer to nudge forward. And that's all they have to do is lean forward and touch the individual. And now the officer is probably fired and maybe prosecuted. So I think they're just trying to show that the police are incapable of keeping their emotions in check. And it's their hair trigger emotions that lead them to commit these terrible assaults on people, particularly people of color, as the phony, fake, false, disproven narrative goes. So that's what they're trying to do. Having said that, here's what I hope. I hope every and any legislator within the sound of my voice over these 300 radio stations that the Larry Elder Show is on, I want you to go to your state legislator. I want your House or Senate, wherever you may be, but to the legislature. And I want you to propose a bill making it criminal for anybody to get within 6 feet of any police officer unless they are asking for assistance. There needs to be personal space. These people are getting up and within, like I said, within an inch or two of an officer's face and or ears, screaming at the top of their lungs, and the officer isn't allowed to budge. They have to be, Buckingham Palace guards, where they're not allowed to move a muscle. And it's wrong. No one can withstand that, particularly over a 6 or an 8 or a 10 or a 12-hour shift. And they shouldn't have to. These are human beings who have feelings and emotions, and they shouldn't have to. To me, anybody who accosts an officer within 6 feet of them, screaming or anything else even close to trying to make them uncomfortable should be locked up or at least cited for disturbing the peace or in some way assaulting or accosting a peace officer, something like that, because that is awful. What he just described was just horrific. And if you, like I said, look it up for yourself. I'm not going to promote my Twitter or Facebook feeds right now. Let's go to New York, New York. And that's Joe. Hey, Joe, you're in New York City, and you're now on the Larry Elder Show. Go right ahead.
Hey, good evening. I'd like to actually point your audience to a wonderful book that actually explains many of the motivations on the left and many of the movements on the left that led to the demonization of traditional white Christian culture in the United States. It's called The Culture of Critique by Dr. Kevin MacDonald. And it goes into the cultural Marxism. Really, that's what it is. It's really cultural Marxism that's marching through our institutions. It's marching through our government. It's marching through our schools. And most importantly, it's marching through the mass media. This nonstop demonization of Christian culture, European culture in the United States as being uniquely evil, uniquely racist, which is just absolute nonsense. Because explain to me, if white people are so inherently racist, how the hell did old Barack Obama get elected twice as president of the United States?
Well,
if
that's
white
a
people
point.
are so
That's a point that a lot of people don't want to hear. You're spot on, and I appreciate the tip on the book. Thank you very much for that. But you're spot on. The United States is not inherently or systemically racist at all. It is, in fact, the least racist country on this planet. We'll talk more after this.
All across America, The Larry Elder Show.
Trending now on the Dennis Prager Show.
Are the polls accurate that Biden is quite ahead? What is your read?
If the election were held tomorrow, Biden would win. The polls are not accurate. They're push polls, which means that the polling companies want a certain outcome because they're paid by corporations that want that outcome. And so they do little things like poll more Democrats than Republicans, and then they say, well, there's more registered Democrats than Republicans in the country. Well, that's true, but that doesn't mean there's going to be a turnout that has an 8-point spread like you do. And then they have the independents. What independents? They never say. So if you're going to call San Francisco and somebody's going to be an independent, which the polling companies quite often do, you're going to get a liberal take on your poll, and that's called push polling. Anyway, Biden would win tomorrow, but he's a weak candidate, and Trump can exploit him in the debates. If COVID diminishes, and it's a stubborn disease, that will ignite the economy, which is really what Donald Trump is all about. So all the other stuff is secondary to COVID diminishing and the economy surging again, because the radical Black Lives Matter movement situation works against Biden. As I said, most people don't want this radical left approach, and you saw Trump exploit that in Tulsa on Saturday. If things go well for the country, Trump wins. If they continue to be chaotic, he probably loses.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Hey, folks, it's the Eric Metaxas Show. I'm talking to Charlie Kirk. This is why you didn't go to college and why I scorn the college that I attended. They are no longer doing their job, and they're producing people like Mayor de Blasio, who's thrilled that his daughter was arrested by cops that are theoretically under him, trying to protect property and so on and so forth. So he is signaling that he is not with the cops and he's not with the people who own the businesses that are being looted. He's making it clear that he is not for them.
They don't have grounding principles, Eric. So, for example, you and I, we are yoked and grounded by the Bible. Like that, this is our framework, right? And so
at least we hope to be, right? In other words, we're not just saying that. We
Coming up after the top of the hour, we're going to talk with Michael Medved, friend of Larry's, friend of the show's, friend of mine. If you don't know who I am, Bob France, sitting in for Larry Elder once again live here in Cleveland, Ohio, the ReliefFactor.com studios. And Michael and I are going to talk about slavery. Why? Well, for a pretty good reason, I think. Senator Tim Kaine, who was the Democrat Party's last vice presidential nominee, he ran as Hillary Clinton's number 2 back in 2016. Most Americans probably forgot that because he's flat out forgettable. He tried to make himself relevant last week when he said on the floor of the United States Senate this.
The United States didn't inherit slavery from anybody. We created it. It got created by the Virginia General Assembly and the legislatures of other states. It got created by the court systems in colonial America and since that enforced fugitive slave laws. We created it.
Tim Kaine says we created slavery. The moment I heard those words from Tim Kaine, my mind went to our Salem colleague Michael Medved, because Michael Medved wrote a book, The 10 Great Lies About America, that I read years ago. And I remember very distinctly one of the chapters in it that outlined the untruth about that very fact. The idea that slavery was uniquely an American institution and that Americans were uniquely responsible for its spread, etc. And he went into the history of slavery and all of humankind and all of our cultures and all of our civilizations and all of the different ethnicities and races that have been enslaved throughout human history. So I just knew I had to talk to the right guy, and that was Michael Medved. And he will join us coming up after the top of the hour to talk about slavery and what the United States' true role was in the vast, bigger picture of worldwide slavery. For now, we go right back to it, and let's take a phone call from where? We're going to go to, my eyes are going, I can't see the screen so well. Is it Broomall, Pennsylvania? Am I saying that correctly, Mac? Is it Broomall?
Yes, it's Broomall.
Broomall. Okay, Mac, thank you for the call. Go right ahead.
Yeah, retired Navy Special Ops, 20 years.
God bless you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, my pleasure. No country worth better than worth fighting. And it's one thing when I'm over in those Haji countries, and we have to respect those there, but don't expect them respected here. This nation wasn't founded on Islam; it was founded on Jesus Christ, and that's the name of that tune. Anyway, there's a minister. He's called Ernie, not Bernie. Ernie Sanders. He's a pastor. 48 years. He has a program. What's right? What's left? And he comes on late, but he said there's a group called the Minutemen of America, and it started in California with all these riots. And as soon as they form and they're getting ready to burn down a building.
Mac, I'm going to ask you to hold that thought, my friend, because I've got a hard break here, and I will look up Pastor Ernie so that I can indeed educate myself on that. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Trending now on the Hugh Hewitt Show.
What you have said that from your memoir that was the most controversial thing is that former Vice President Biden, hadn't been right on any major foreign policy issue in 40 years. Do you worry about a Biden administration and that fundamental inability to grasp great power competition infecting that West Wing?
Yeah, I stand by that statement. I will say, Hugh, it related mainly to things that had happened in the Cold War. Biden voted against every single arms program, I think, that Ronald Reagan put up on the Hill. He voted for the Iraq War and so on. So I do have those policy differences with him. I will say in the Obama administration, we did have a very deep disagreement on Afghanistan, and that was a big deal. But on issues like intervening in Libya and dumping Mubarak in Egypt, he and I actually were on the same side on those issues. So and the other thing I write about in the book that hasn't gotten much attention is that I also think that the vice president had some issues with the military, and I wrote in Duty about how he would warn the president that he was being boxed in, that the military was trying to take away his options and so on, and he'd kind of rail at the generals, and that bothered me some. So, there are puts and takes with any presidential candidate.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
It's hard for us to get our heads around how cynical this is, that they're using the death of this man, George Floyd, to launch a political revolution which will harm everyone of every color. I will say it until I can't say it anymore. People need to wake up to the evil of this organization. And what you just said is only the most recent dramatic example. So go
sure, and it is the next phase of what this movement, because you're right, Black Lives Matter is not, as a movement, is not about Black lives genuinely. If we really wanted to talk about that, we would talk about defunding Planned Parenthood, because Black mothers in a lot of cities have the highest rate of abortions for Black children compared to other groups. And so if we really wanted to talk about Black lives and what this organization supposedly stands for, we would be having a different conversation. But they're using this so-called movement to truly revolutionize America and to undermine Western civilization and the founding principles of America, which is that all men, all human beings are created equal. We're endowed by our Creator with our unalienable rights. And among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They want to take those down. And so they are trying to destroy society by defunding the police, by having total anarchy in the streets, no system of a civil society. They've attacked the family through promoting abortion, through attacking the nuclear family, through an organized society. And now the last thing, they're coming after the church. And so Sean King tweeted this saying, calling for burning the churches. And so what I did yesterday on the plane, Eric, it struck me that Christians right now need to be bold. We need to call out the truth.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today.
This is Lanhee Chen of the Hoover Institution for townhall.com. Public health officials across America have spent the last several months warning about the dangers of the coronavirus and the need for us to stay at home, halt economic activity, and avoid social interactions with our friends and neighbors. We are now reopening our economy in many parts of the country, but these same public health officials have compromised their own credibility as we do so. On the one hand, they've urged caution and a slow return to work, school, and faith gatherings. They've criticized those who oppose the stay-at-home orders. But at the same time, these officials have been broadly supportive of the large protests on America's streets in the last few weeks. Public health officials should be helping us understand the comparative risks of activities, not endorsing the causes they like while prohibiting the ones they don't. Their hypocrisy is costly indeed. They have impacted our ability to address future health crises. I'm Lanhee Chen.
ADF, fighting for those whose liberties are being violated. Trending now on the Mike Gallagher Show.
Here's what Bill Barr had to say about voter fraud, censorship, mail-in ballots, all of it. The Attorney General is clearly concerned about all of it.
Yes, I am worried about censorship. I'm worried about a number of things going into the election. One, the censorship of robust debate. I'm also worried about undermining the public confidence in the integrity of the elections. The thing we have going for us, especially when there's intense division in the country, is that we have peaceful transfers of power, and our way of resolving it is to have an election. But when governments, state governments, start adopting these practices like mail-in ballots that open the floodgates of potential fraud, then people's confidence in the outcome of the election is going to be undermined.
Here's cut number 10. Listen to Bill Barr and what he said about this election fraud issue that he's deeply concerned about?
Well, there's a big discussion right now about mail-in voting. Hillary
Yeah.
Clinton said it's fine, it's fair.
Well, it absolutely opens the floodgates to fraud. Those things are delivered into mailboxes. They can be taken out. There's questions about whether or not it even denies a secret ballot, because a lot of the states have you signing the outside of the envelope. So the person who opens the envelope will know how people voted. There's right now, a foreign country could print up tens of thousands of counterfeit ballots and be very hard for us to detect which was the right and which was the wrong ballot. So I think it can upset and undercut the confidence in the integrity of our elections.
And yet, if there is a groundswell of voters, that makes it much harder for them to pull the wool over America's eyes.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Hey, folks, it's the Eric Metaxas Show. I'm talking to Charlie Kirk.
Oh, my goodness
This is
gracious.
why
That's a heck of a way
you
to get
didn't
an
go to
intro.
college. And
Thank you so much once again for joining us. I am Bob France, live in Cleveland, Ohio. Sitting in for the sage of South Central from Los Angeles. Larry Elder is, of course, out promoting his new movie, Uncle Tom, which you can check out at uncletom.com. So Tim Kaine, former vice presidential candidate with Hillary Clinton, now current Democrat senator, said this last week.
The United States didn't inherit slavery from anybody. We created it. It got created by the Virginia General Assembly and the legislatures of other states. It got created by the court systems in colonial America and since that enforced fugitive slave laws. We created it.
To say that I was taken aback, stunned, and sickened and saddened by that is an understatement. It also meant that I immediately thought of one name, and that name was Michael Medved, our Salem colleague who wrote a book about the 10 Big Lies about America, a good portion of which was about slavery being a uniquely American institution. I said, I have got to talk to Michael Medved, so that's exactly what we are going to do. Michael, thank you for joining us from Seattle. How are you, sir?
I'm very well indeed. And yes, the whole notion of slavery being a unique source for American guilt is right behind the entire cultural moment we have. And it is a lie from the pit of hell. Slavery is a universal institution. And by the way, universal in Africa. And the idea that the United States bears some unique guilt, the United States deserves, along with Great Britain, unique credit for abolishing slavery, for getting rid of it. But this institution, which had existed for literally thousands of years, was one in which the United States wasn't even a major participant. And David Bryan Davis, who taught for 40 years at Yale and was recognized, he wrote a book called Inhuman Bondage, which is the definitive book on the history of slavery. And of the slaves who were kidnapped in Africa and transported elsewhere, 4% were bound for what later became the United States. Most went to places like Brazil, the West Indies, and, lest we forget, before European slavery even began, the Islamic world. The Islamic world was the world's greatest slavers. And they abolished slavery in Saudi Arabia in 1961. That's 1961.
You know, Michael, that is, I want to get more of that history. Tell me what you thought and what you felt when you heard Tim Kaine.
Well, I played it, and the idea that slavery didn't exist, that the United States didn't inherit slavery, they created it. Slavery was, they had already, before that 1619 date, there were British settlements in the West Indies, and that's where most of the slaves went. Well, today's places like Jamaica and Trinidad and the Bahamas, and all of those places were sugar plantations. And Santo Domingo was a huge slave population. To this day, Brazil, which is the second largest country in population in the Western Hemisphere, Brazil is close to 40% people of African descent. But this idea of America being exceptional and exceptionally guilty and exceptionally cruel, it is complete nonsense. And going along with that nonsense is the idea that America built its wealth on the institution of slavery. Hey, Earth to commentator or historian, the United States of America, if you look at the way it was divided in the Civil War, the wealthy part of the country, the part of the country that was progressing financially, was the part that had abolished slavery, and abolished slavery mostly in the very end of the 1700s. They'd gotten rid of it. And slavery was not a key to economic development. It was an impediment to economic development. And which is why the North won the Civil War. The North was prospering, it built up industry, it built up railroads. The South had not, because it maintained this feudal economy.
Michael, we're talking with Michael Medved. Of course, he's a Salem radio host and a best-selling author and historian. Michael, because what we're dealing with in this country right now with all the racial strife, it's more than just, of course, about police brutality or George Floyd or anything else. There is this movement to condemn white supremacy and white privilege and lift up the black American experience because of slavery. That the idea is the reason whites are, quote-unquote, on top and founded this country is because of their brutal oppression, generally speaking, of Africans who were brought to this country. In your book and in an article that you wrote for Town Hall about all of this, you pointed out that a very, very tiny percentage of the ancestors of today's Americans, white Americans, actually participated in and owned slaves. Yet all of modern day white America is being blamed for the institution as if we all somehow participated. Can you go deeper into that?
Sure. Now, I first of all, let me tell you what someone would say who was part of the, quote, woke contingent, people who are marching in the streets today for BLM. And they would say that, well, even though, take my family, for instance. My mother was born in Germany. She escaped with her family in 1934 before the actual slaughter began in Germany and in Europe. And obviously, there's no one in my family who ever came close to owning slaves. But what they would say is that, but your grandfather and your mother and your other grandparents and people who came to this country benefited from white privilege because they did not have dark skin and because they were not impacted by this overwhelming prejudice against people of color. And, okay, that's true, but to say that people who come here with nothing and who face all kinds of obstacles of anti-Catholicism, which was a very powerful force in the United States. We had a whole political party, the so-called American Party or Know Nothing Party, that was organized on the principle of anti-Catholicism. One of the things that I think gets people very upset, and rightfully so, Bob, is this idea that people, simply because of white skin color, have had it easy. Anybody who knows family history knows the struggles that many of our parents, grandparents, great-grandparents went through. And this notion that everything is based on race also ignores the remarkable achievements of people of color. Black people have been a part of this country and have achieved unbelievable things culturally and economically and educationally, literally since before slavery was abolished, and which is another thing that people don't talk about. At the time of the Civil War, before the Emancipation Proclamation and before the 13th Amendment, there were already close to 1 million people of color who were freed, what they used to call freed Negroes. And when they tried to organize as an alternative to slavery, this idea of what they called colonization, that we would go ahead and free the slaves, but then they would go eagerly back to Africa. It was the free people of color who said, no way, we've been here in America already for hundreds of years, and this is our country, and we want to stay, and we want to participate. By the way, I'll tell you an exact number, 183,000 black Americans fought in the Civil War and fought heroically, many of them immediately former slaves. And this shows you the sickness of this moment we live in, Bob, is that there's a beautiful monument to the 54th Massachusetts Volunteers, which is this legendary black regiment that was celebrated in the movie Glory 20 years ago. In any event, the memorial was defaced. It was attacked by demonstrators who didn't like the fact that they had a memorial showing very clearly black soldiers under the American flag serving the Union Army. It was trashed on Boston Common.
Well, they've done that, and they've done other similarly crazy things, Michael. They tore down or attempted to tear down the statue of Ulysses Grant, who led the Union Army to defeat the Confederacy and to defeat slavery, and then went on to fight against the KKK. I mean, the idea, and not to mention, of course, now we know that a great number of the founding fathers of this country did own slaves, but they are now being identified as primarily being slave owners rather than the extraordinarily courageous individuals who helped build the greatest monument to freedom that mankind has ever known, and that is the United States of America.
Yeah, absolutely right. And by the way, it's greatly overplayed when they talk about, all of our founding fathers were slave owners. At the Constitutional Convention, the biggest slave owner was a guy named George Mason of Virginia. And he owned over 100.
Michael, unfortunately, we're going to have to cut it there because we are just up against this hard break, as you know very well in our business. Thank you so much, Michael Medved. We'll be right back.
Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
So the Attorney General of Massachusetts, she says sometimes you have to burn down everything before you can rebuild it. She's talking to the Chamber of Commerce when she says this. You have Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who on her Instagram feed had a 101 guide on how not to get caught by the police.
Wait, before you go to AOC, let's go back to this is the AG in Massachusetts.
I'm paraphrasing. Actually, I have the quote here. I can read from it directly.
I heard it, and it was very clear that she was praising the arson.
It says, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Yes, America is burning, but that's how forests grow. This is Maura Healey, the Massachusetts Attorney General, speaking to the Chamber of Commerce.
I just want to pause on that. The idea that the Attorney General of Massachusetts, faced with arson of people's property, people's businesses. We're not talking about forest fires. We are talking about human beings who have built businesses.
Let's go a level deeper, though, Eric. The left does not believe in private property. And this is something I've been talking about for years. And I've been challenged by the intelligentsia of the radical left by saying, no, we believe in private property. We actually look at their fundamental writings. They don't believe that individuals should be able to own property. And this is fundamental to Western society. And so a lot of these radicals have been indoctrinated in our universities to believe that somehow you can make something good out of burning down our entire civilization.
Right.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on America First with Sebastian Gorka.
Issued June 24th, 2020. Re. Michael T. Flynn, petitioner on emergency petition for a writ of mandamus from the United States Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit. Order. Upon consideration of the emergency petition for a writ of mandamus, the responses thereto, and the reply, the briefs of amici curiae in support of the parties, and the argument by the counsel, it is ordered that Flynn's petition for a writ of mandamus be granted. General Flynn, welcome to America First. Are you on the line?
I sure am, Sebastian. Yeah, thanks for having me, and I really appreciate the support from you and your listeners during this almost 4 years of going through this. And I'll have a lot more to say later on, but that was a very powerful motion that the appeals court had, and rightly so. They're basically following the law, and I think it renews, in some respects, a sense of confidence in the justice system of America today. So it's really, really great news for our family and great news for American justice.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
But I'm shocked, not by his book, I haven't read it, but by what Judge Royce Lambert wrote in his ruling about the book. The judge concluded, quote, "The court is persuaded that defendant Bolton likely jeopardized national security by disclosing classified information in violation of his non-disclosure agreement obligations. Bolton may indeed have caused the country irreparable harm." Jeopardized national security. How much damage did this book do, Mr. Pompeo?
So, Hugh, I haven't had a chance to read the book either. I've seen a number of the excerpts have been put out. I'd say three things about it. First of all,
call the Larry Elder Show now at 888-971-SAGE. That's 888-971-7243. Eldorado's Let Larry Know What's on Your Mind.
Bob France in once again for the Sage of South Central. So glad to be here. Larry is promoting his movie Uncle Tom tonight. He's got another event, so he's asked me to man the program, and I am honored to do so. You've got to see his movie, by the way, whether it's in his absence or tomorrow or this weekend. I don't care. You got to see Uncle Tom. The people in the movie share three things in common: they're courageous, they have had a life-changing experience, and they're Black American conservatives. That part matters. These are the voices of the movie Uncle Tom. See it now at UncleTom.com, or see it this weekend at UncleTom.com. See it. UncleTom.com. Enter the discount code Larry and receive 20% off the price of the on-demand rental or the cost of the DVDs. You will not regret it. We are talking Race in America. This movie could not have come out at a better time. I know he didn't plan it this way. This thing's been in the works for a long time, and suddenly it comes out in the midst of the George Floyd, horrific situation, the indefensible killing of that man in Minnesota, the months-long rioting now, because we're over a month. So we're into our second month of rioting over that and more. It really could not have been more timely for this to come out. So you've got to make sure that you educate yourself. We got a pretty good education there, too, in the last segment with Michael Medved. Michael wrote, not only did he write the book, The 10 Big Lies About America, including the fact that, or the lie that slavery is uniquely American, and it is distinctly an American innovation, which is what Tim Kaine said. He also wrote a kind of a summary of that for Town Hall, and this was rerun just a short while ago, earlier this month in June. I don't exactly have the date in front of me, but I was reading this again, and the history that Michael presents here is so extraordinarily important, talking about the history of slavery in the world long before the birth of the United States of America in 1776, the founding of the Republic. So you really, I would love to share this with you, but again, I've kind of sworn off social media promotion on principle here, but you can look it up for yourself. Go to townhall.com and search Michael Medved's 6 Inconvenient Truths About the U.S. and Slavery, and you can educate yourself just a little bit more, as we just did on the air. Okay, let's go to Washington. Not sure if it's state or D.C., but Dean is where we're going. And Dean, thanks for joining us on the Larry Elder Show. Go right ahead.
Hi, yeah. Yeah, I was just calling on slavery.
Dean, I think we've got a phone issue here, my friend. Yeah, that one's just not working for us. We're going to have to try you. We'll try you back. I'll put you on hold rather than dropping you. If you want to try to get back on, get yourself to a better location so we can hear you. I'd love to hear what you have to say. But for now, we'll go to Long Beach, California. That's Rob. Hey, Rob, it's Bob, sitting in for Larry. Go right ahead.
Yes, sir. I just wanted to make a comment about the Black Lives Matter and them being very hypocritical, because, if anything, they should be burning down these family planning centers and how many Black babies are murdered there every year.
Yeah, well, you're not the only one to make that point, my friend, and it's a tragedy of indescribable proportions, the number of African American babies that are indeed aborted every year, and it's not by accident. I don't want to have this show right now and talk about Planned Parenthood, the planning centers you're talking about. I don't want to get into Margaret Sanger, the noted eugenicist and founder of Planned Parenthood. The organization, by the way, that once named Hillary Clinton their Woman of the Year, and Hillary Clinton responded by saying she shared Margaret Sanger's vision. And Margaret Sanger's vision was to wipe out the undesirables, to weed, I think was the exact word, weed out the undesirables, including minorities, people of color. And one of the ways she was going to do that was, well, what she did. She put abortion clinics in every heavily populated black area that you could find. And those who carried on her work afterwards did the same thing. Why do you think it is that there's a Planned Parenthood center within walking distance of virtually every major inner city urban center? It's not coincidence. It's access, because that's exactly what their goal was from their founding, and it remains today. The black lives that matter most should be the most defenseless lives. The youngest lives, our youngest people, our youngest citizens should be the ones most protected. And those black lives don't matter to so many in the BLM movement because they allow this. And by the way, Patrice Cullors, we were talking about that before. One of the co-founders of Black Lives Matter openly admits this isn't about black lives. It is absolutely not about black lives. It is about destroying the United States of America. She said she and one of her other co-founders are trained Marxists, and Marxist ideology is what they are going to use to take this country apart. It's not about saving black lives. Don't even begin to entertain that thought. Los Angeles, Bridget, you are on the Larry Elder Show. It's Bob Brandt sitting in. Hi, Bridget, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm wonderful.
Hi, I had a comment about the Bubba Wallace story.
Okay.
Yes. Well, I mean, I'm just curious. I was just kind of reading something on the sporting news just a little bit ago and online. And he was saying that, the backlash he gets all the time and things like that. And, and he was, I just feel, I don't know. I'm not sure. I just feel like he is, this is just something that he wants to get his name out there maybe and just feel like he's a victim. And I have no idea what, Richard Petty, even no response from him at all as well.
No, yeah. For those who don't know, he races for Richard Petty's team, if you will, and I haven't heard anything from them either. And I wish I knew his motivation. A lot of people said he wasn't motivated at all. I don't know if you saw this, Bridget, but when the whole thing came down, a lot of people defended him. We're talking about when the news that came down last night that this was all a big hoax. A lot of people said, well, it's not Bubba's fault. He said he didn't see it. He was only told about it by NASCAR's chief, NASCAR's president. And I thought, well, that's an odd thing for him to be told that there's a noose hanging in his garage or in his bay in the garage, that he wouldn't say, show me, that he wouldn't go down and take a look at it for himself. I thought it was odd that he then went on The View and every other TV show that he could find, telling everybody about this and then preaching about, it's so good, we need to be together because this terrible hate cannot continue. Why he would go out there and trumpet a message that he did not know 100% for certain was accurate. So I don't know what his motivation is, but at the end of the day, after the FBI said that's been there since, at least in that bay, since October, and oh, by the way, they're also in a whole bunch of the other bays, he went on Don Lemon last night and doubled down and said he still believes it was a noose and he still believes nobody else is going to be able to change his mind. So that kind of mentality says that he was in on this hoax from the beginning, and just like Jussie Smollett never admitted his guilt and his complicity in the hoax that he tried to perpetrate, Bubba Wallace isn't going to either. And by the way, it's not even unique. It's not even, it's not even creative, because these hate hoaxes, these racial hate hoaxes have been going on for a very long time, including many during the Trump administration with an attempt to try to make Trump and his supporters look racist. We'll talk a little bit more about that after the timeout. Once again, my name is Bob France. So happy to be sitting in for Larry Elder here on the Salem Radio Network.
Trending now on The Mike Gallagher Show.
Here's what Bill Barr had to say about voter fraud, censorship, mail-in ballots, all of it. The Attorney General is clearly concerned about all of it.
Yes, I am worried about censorship. I'm worried about a number of things going into the election. One, the censorship of robust debate. I'm also worried about undermining the public confidence in the integrity of the elections. The thing we have going for us, especially when there's intense division in the country, is that we have peaceful transfers of power, and our way of resolving it is to have an election. But when governments, state governments, start adopting these practices like mail-in ballots that open the floodgates of potential fraud, then people's confidence in the outcome of the election is going to be undermined.
Here's cut number 10. Listen to Bill Barr and what he said about this election fraud issue that he's deeply concerned about.
Well, there's a big discussion right now about mail-in voting. Hillary Clinton said it's fine, it's fair.
Well, it absolutely opens the floodgates to fraud. Those things are delivered into mailboxes. They can be taken out. There's questions about whether or not it even denies a secret ballot, because a lot of the states have you signing the outside of the envelope. So the person who opens the envelope will know how people voted. There's right now, a foreign country could print up tens of thousands of counterfeit ballots and be very hard for us to detect which was the right and which was the wrong ballot. So I think it can upset and undercut the confidence in the integrity of our elections.
And yet, if there is a groundswell of voters, that makes it much harder for them to pull the wool over America's eyes.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
Hey, folks, it's the Eric Metaxas Show. I'm talking to Charlie Kirk. This is why you didn't go to college and why I scorn the college that I attended. They are no longer doing their job, and they're producing people like Mayor de Blasio, who's thrilled that his daughter was arrested by cops that are theoretically under him, trying to protect property and so on and so forth. So he is signaling that he is not with the cops and he's not with the people who own the businesses that are being looted. He's making it clear that he is not for them.
They don't have grounding principles, Eric. So, for example, you and I, we are yoked and grounded by the Bible. Like that, this is our framework, right? And so,
at least we hope to be, right? In other words, we're not just saying that. We really believe in this thing called truth, and we really want to do the right thing by everyone. Even if we screw up sometimes, we have a standard.
And so it is not moral relativism. So, for example, looting in 1870 would be considered wrong under the Christian ethic as it is considered wrong today. But under the leftist ethic, it all depends on times and circumstances, and it's morally relativistic. It depends who's in power. It depends how bad you want it. This is what you see, this kind of very unhealthy relationship with the left, which is between this advocacy of chaos with coupled with a police state that they can deploy at their own wishes. So, for example, if you go to church, they will send the Praetorian Guard after you.
Right.
If you burn down the church at night, they will call you a righteous protester.
Keep up with what's trending.
Welcome back to the Larry Elder Show.
Oh, yes, indeed. 26 minutes before the top of the hour. And we continue on the Larry Elder Show. Bob Frantz sitting in for the Sage. Phone lines are open to you at 888-971-SAGE. That's 888-971-7243. Don't forget to get the podcast of the Larry Elder Show and to become an Eldorado. Go to LarryElder.com. So I wanted to share a couple of these with you so you have an exact idea of what we're talking about. When I say it's not even creative, when I say it's not new to fake a hate crime, to fake a racial hate crime in order to create more division, to sow dissent, to create more animosity and hatred between the races. And the interesting thing, the coincidental thing, the commonality in all of these crimes I'm about to share with you is the lack of an actual individual culprit. Nobody sees it. Nobody saw anything. Because if they actually find a culprit for one of these fake hate crimes, then they're going to have to try that person, either through the court of public opinion or in an actual court of law. And since they have made it up, they can't have an actual defendant. So they have to just leave a terrible thing out there, a sign, and say, somebody did that, therefore, and since it was either anti-gay or anti-black or anti-this or anti-that, whoever it is must be a white guy if it's anti-black, or a straight guy if it's anti-gay, or a straight white guy, or the worst thing of all, a straight white conservative guy. And so since we don't have an individual target, an individual defendant, we can then blame everybody who fits that stereotype. This is what straight white, or they call it cis white, Trump supporters do in their spare time. They harass actors on their way back from Subway at 2 a.m. with 20-degree below temperatures, and they bring bleach and they bring ropes and they try to put ropes around the necks, and they wear their red Trump hats out there. I mean, oh my God, well, the stupidity of Jussie Smollett and his little crew is just beyond the pale. But anyway, you understand the point here. They never have an actual person that is the defendant, so they can then just blame the collective, white society or this society or that society. And it's been going on for so long. Bubba Wallace he and NASCAR, who I think inspired on this, think it was cute. In the middle of all of these racial riots and looting and arson and assaults and attacks and defund the cop movements and Chaz chop zones, and did they think it would just be cute? It wasn't original. The Daily Caller did a good job of compiling some of the most outrageous, phony hate crimes since Trump took office in some rough chronological order here. November 2016, right when Trump was elected, a Muslim woman at the University of Michigan received national attention from outlets like the Post after she claimed a drunk 20-something man threatened to light her on fire if she didn't remove her hijab. The university condemned the hateful attack, which was then proven to be a hoax and admitted by the woman. Also November of 2016, Taylor Volk, an openly bisexual senior at North Park University, claimed to be the target of hateful notes and emails following Trump's election. Volk told NBC News, "I just want them to stop," but the them referenced by Volk turned out to be herself. The whole thing was fabricated. Also November of 2016, they were busy when Trump got elected, right? Philadelphia woman Ashley Boyer claimed she was harassed at a gas station by white Trump-supporting males, one of whom pulled a weapon on her. Boyer claimed the men proceeded to talk about the election and how they're glad they won't have to deal with N-words so much longer. Boyer deleted her post after it went viral and claimed the men had been caught and were facing criminal charges. Local police investigated and debunked her entire account. Also November of 2016, white men rob Muslim woman of her hijab and wallet. An 18-year-old Muslim woman in Louisiana claimed two white men, again, without names, without persons, without faces, without sketches, just white men, one of whom was wearing a Trump hat, attacked and robbed her, taking her wallet and hijab while yelling racial slurs. She later admitted to the Lafayette Police Department she made the whole thing up. December of 2016, 1 month after the election, another 18-year-old Muslim woman, this time in New York, was the subject of breathless headlines after she claimed to have been attacked by a group of Trump supporters on a New York subway while onlookers did nothing. The woman, Yasmin Saweed, would go on to confess she made the whole thing up. I could go on and on and on. And as a matter of fact, I might after this time out, because there are so many of them. Minorities faking hate crimes in order to blame white Republicans. We'll be right back.
Trending now on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
What you have said that from your memoir that was the most controversial thing is that Vice President Biden, former Vice President Biden, hadn't been right on any major foreign policy issue in 40 years. Do you worry about a Biden administration and that fundamental inability to grasp great power competition infecting that West Wing?
Yeah, I stand by that statement. I will say, Hugh, it related mainly to things that had happened in the Cold War. Biden voted against every single arms program, I think, that Ronald Reagan put up on the Hill. He voted for the Iraq War and so on. So I do have those policy differences with him. I will say in the Obama administration, we did have a very deep disagreement on Afghanistan, and that was a big deal. But on issues like intervening in Libya and dumping Mubarak in Egypt, he and I actually were on the same side on those issues. So and the other thing I write about in the book that hasn't gotten much attention is that I also think that the vice president had some issues with the military, and I wrote in Duty about how he would warn the president that he was being boxed in, that the military was trying to take away his options and so on, and he'd kind of rail at the generals, and that bothered me some. So, there are puts and takes with any presidential candidate.
Keep up with what's trending. Subscribe on YouTube today. Trending now on the Eric Metaxas Show.
It's hard for us to get our heads around how cynical this is. That they're using the death of this man, George Floyd, to launch a political revolution which will harm everyone of every color. I will say it until I can't say it anymore. People need to wake up to the evil of this organization. And what you just said is only the most recent dramatic example. So go
sure,
back.
and it is the next phase of what this movement, because you're right, Black Lives Matter is not, as a movement, is not about Black lives genuinely. If we really wanted to talk about that, we would talk about defunding Planned Parenthood, because Black mothers in a lot of cities have the highest rate of abortions for Black children compared to other groups. And so if we really wanted to talk about Black lives and what this organization supposedly stands for, we would be having a different conversation. But they're using this so-called movement to truly revolutionize America and to undermine Western civilization and the founding principles of America, which is that all men, all human beings are created equal. We're endowed by our Creator with our unalienable rights. And among those are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They want to take those down. And so they are trying to destroy society by defunding the police, by having total anarchy in the streets, no system of a civil society. They've attacked the family through promoting abortion, through attacking the nuclear family, through an organized society. And now the last thing, they're coming after the church. And so Sean King tweeted this saying, calling for burning the churches. And so what I did yesterday on the plane, Eric, it struck me that Christians right now need to be bold. We need to call out the truth.
Welcome back to the pain-free relieffactor.com studios. It's the Sage, Larry Elder.
Oh, I have to talk. I'd rather jam to the Commodores, but I am being forced against my will. I'm being coerced. 16 minutes before the top of the hour and the end of the broadcast, so we're going to do our best to get a few more phone calls in here, but just two more quickies. I've got about another dozen and a half of these that I could read to you, but I don't want to beat it into the ground, but just a couple of the more egregious ones. Air Force Academy. The Air Force Academy was thrown up in September of 2017 into turmoil when horrific racist notes were found at the Academy's prep school. Go Home N-Word read one of the notes. Superintendent Lieutenant General J.B. Silveria went viral with an impassioned speech addressing the racist notes. 2 months later, much more quietly and much less impassioned. Authorities determined through thorough investigations that one of the students targeted by the notes was also the person who wrote the notes. It's funny how that always gets a little bit more quiet. K-State, Kansas State University filed a police report a student did there in November 2017 over racist graffiti left on his car. Go home, N-boy. And whites only read the racist graffiti, which the student later admitted to writing himself. And finally, we'll throw this last gem at you. You may recall this. This was actually right before Trump was elected, not after, but November 2016. It's a doozy. This occurred 1 week before the election. Leftist media outlets ran headlines like this: a black church burned in the name of Trump, after a black church in Greenville, Mississippi was set on fire and spray painted with the words, "Vote Trump." The Washington Post's original coverage of the incident read in part, Greenville Mayor Eric Simmons called the fire a hateful and cowardly act, sparked by the incendiary rhetoric of GOP nominee Donald Trump during his presidential campaign, end quote. But the church, as it turned out, and the announcement was made with much less fanfare, was set on fire by one of the church's own congregants, who was black. So what Bubba Wallace and the NASCAR team did here is not even new. Let's put up a generic hate symbol, or let's claim that's their generic hate symbol. Bubba doesn't even have to see it to go on TV and condemn it and denounce it and speak out against it. And if somebody comes around and says, hey, no, that's just a hand loop for a door pull handle, just say, no, it isn't, and continue to call it a noose. That's what Jamel Hill is doing. That is what Gayle King did. That is what Al Sharpton did, saying, nope, I don't care what the FBI says. I don't care if it was there since October and that there is photographic evidence to prove it. I don't care that those same handles are on the garages of all of the other bays, the doors of all of the other bays in that garage, including people who aren't Bubba Wallace. I don't care. It's still a noose. It's still a hate crime. They just are not going to let that go because of what my guest said about an hour ago. Vince Everett Ellison said they need this to be true. They needed it to be true so they can continue the narrative that is going on in the country. Let's go to Dallas, Texas, and that's where we find D.C. on the Larry Elder Show. D.C., welcome to the program. It's Bob sitting in for Larry. Good evening. Go right ahead.
Bob, thank you for receiving my call.
Yes, sir.
All right. Bob, listen, man, I'm a moderate. This is why I really don't like politics, because the conservatives can bring up incidents that's hypocritical. The liberals can bring up incidents that's hypocritical. But let me tell you my issue.
That is all true.
I'm an African-American. What scares me to death is the fact that if people didn't die in the Civil War, I could have been born a slave in this country. That scares the heck out of me. That bothers me. And then I do my history. Generally speaking, since then, when blacks make any the needle moves or any significant moves of substance to move forward to better themselves, unfortunately, blood has to be shed. That's the problem in this country, my brother.
Give me an example.
Okay, when Dr. King wanted the Voting Act, Lyndon Johnson told him, it was recorded in the book of Ralph Abernathy, the walls come tumbling down. It's going to have to be another death. Okay? Slavery, the Civil War. We were enslaved, my ancestors. 600,000 men had to die for us to come up out of slavery. Death. Those things are sad.
But DC, let me understand. Let me see if we can understand this. Particularly with the slavery example. Doesn't it encourage you? Doesn't it make you feel good? And doesn't it make you feel united with the descendants of white Americans at that time, to know that 600,000 people, the vast majority of them white, fought to ensure freedom and fought to end the scourge of slavery? And you called me your brother a minute ago, and I hope it wasn't just a euphemism, because I love that, and I thank you for that, because you are my brother. You're a human being. and you're an
absolutely.
American, and you're my brother, and that's exactly how it should be. But my point is, how many people died to end a terrible thing? They sacrificed their lives to make this country the beacon of freedom that it is. I feel a sense of fraternity with you over that. Not a sense of sadness, a sense of look at the sacrifices that have been made to make sure that we are a free beacon in this world and that you and I can be brothers. You know what I'm saying? That's a positive. I'm not glad people died, but they willingly died in order to free the Africans that were being held against their will so that they could become African Americans.
Well, this is why I don't practice. Listen, I'd be very careful to hurt innocent people because there are good white people out there. There's good people of all backgrounds, of all cultures. I do believe that, and I thank God for that. But what does make me sad, if I can just say this, is that it took a war to free human beings. That's sad.
Well, I'll tell you this, my friend, and listen, I'm so glad you called me. God bless you, and I wish you good health and prosperity. The fact that it took a war, though, is what makes the United States so uniquely glorious, in that we were willing to wage that war to free the slaves. And there are countries all over this planet who never did so in anywhere near as record speed of time or length of time that we did it. I'll talk more to wrap it up after this.
You're listening to The Larry Elder Show.
If you could do one thing that changed you forever, would you? How about something extraordinary? A bucket list item packing years of memories into 10 exciting days. Chart a new path by joining Dr. Sebastian Gorka.
Set a clear new vision for yourself this year and join me on the Stand with Israel tour this December 2nd to 11th.
Along with special guest Mike Lindell.
God freed me from these and other addictions and started me on a path to a restored heart. Praise Jesus.
Discover over 40 iconic sites as you encounter the life-changing impact of a journey to the Holy Land. Surrounded by like-minded travelers, picture yourself stepping foot in key locations right out of history. Much more than a vacation, this journey guides you through one of the most politically and spiritually significant places in the world. Explore Jerusalem, Galilee, the Dead Sea region, and so much more. Along the way, Dr. Sebastian Gorka will broadcast live and on-site as you watch and participate.
Reserve your spot today for this incredible journey.
Call today to join Dr. Sebastian Gorka on this life-enriching Israel tour, December 2nd to 11th, 2020. Call 855-565-5519 or book online at standwithisraeltour.com.
Trending now on The Dennis Prager Show.
If you could ask one question to black or white leftists, if you only have a chance to ask one, and there are a lot of contenders for that title, but I would ask this: is white racism the greatest problem in American black life? Or is the 80% out of wedlock birth rate, not being born with a man married to your mother, which is the bigger problem in black life? Now, to even ask that question now would probably get you untwittered. Just to ask the question. The suppression of free speech is unprecedented in American history. Do you realize the time we are living through? And it is being done not by the government. Not at all. It is being done in the private sphere by the tech companies that run everything. Twitter, YouTube, Google, Facebook. This is unprecedented in history, let alone American history. There was really one thing that liberals, or even, well, there weren't that many leftists, liberals and conservatives always agreed on free speech, which is why you should see no safe spaces. two really important movies out now. One
Yes, indeed. I want to wrap the show up by responding to a little bit more of what DC said about it took a war and people dying in order to free the slaves that were held here in North America and what would become our republic. And I need to go back to my conversation earlier with Michael Medved, who can quote you chapter and verse about all of the different civilizations and cultures, going back from prehistory to ancient times to medieval times to more modern times. And the number of civilizations which practice the enslavement of other people, including people just like them, for hundreds of years at a time, if not thousands of years at a time. Okay? And he covers all of this in his book, and he talks about this being on virtually every continent. He talked about Africa. Yes, slavery represented a timeless norm before any intrusion by Europeans into Africa. And in fact, the vast majority of enslavement of Africans was carried out by other Africans. But the concept of an African race was the invention of Western colonists, and most African traders saw themselves as selling people other than their own. So he goes through this in great detail. Thousands of years, okay, so many slavery institutions lasted. And which brings us to this. The 13th Amendment to the Constitution put a formal end to the institution of slavery 89 years after the birth of the Republic. When this country decided it was a country and called itself one in 1776, it took just 89 years to wipe out something that was going on in other civilizations for thousands of years in some cases, hundreds of years in most others. We have now had 155 years pass since this welcome emancipation. Moreover, the importation of slaves came to an end in 1808. As provided by the Constitution, a mere 32 years after independence, they stopped importing slaves. Even in the South, more than 80% of the white population never owned slaves. Given the fact that the majority of today's non-black Americans descend from immigrants who arrived to this country after the war between the states, only a tiny percentage of today's white citizens, perhaps about 5%, Michael Medved says, bear any sort of authentic generational guilt for the exploitation of slave labor. Of course, 100 years of Jim Crow laws, economic oppression, and other indefensible discrimination followed the emancipation, but those harsh realities raise different issues from those connected to the long-ago history of bondage. So I bring that up to wrap the show, to tell the caller who said, he hates the fact that a war had to happen. But that war happened so that we could end the scourge, the stain, the terrible reality of slavery, literally hundreds, if not thousands of years earlier than other civilizations had. And that's what makes this country so special and so great, the willingness to do that. That's all the time we've got. Thank you for letting me be here. Larry Elder will be back tomorrow. Be safe, be free, be blessed. Bye-bye.
All across America, The Larry Elder Show.